Prudential.
We're already here. We don't need to worry about anything. Presenter invite, slides or PDFs. We've got it here. Hello, everybody. Hello. Hello, Plethon. Hello, Gemistos. I like the name with the Biden profile picture. What a great name. What a great name with some great people. All right. So before we begin, actually, I'll wait for people to pile in before I start giving off some weird technical.
I know we're live on Twitter. I think there's a problem with YouTube, though.
We'll find out. No,
actually, we're live on YouTube. I mean, not YouTube. We're live on Twitter.
I can literally hear myself on YouTube right now. We are totally fine.
We are live on. No, we're not live on Twitter. So I think maybe StreamYard there's a problem.
It may be my fault. We'll see. Hold on. Give it 2 seconds. It says I'm live on Twitter.
Yeah,
no, it says we're live. We're good. Everything is fine. Okay. Everything is working. Except the important parts. But that's
except entropy.
Except entropy. Boy.
Yeah, we're live. So Plato's Goon Cave is here, so then we're good.
Yeah, if Plato's Goon Cave is retweeting me, then we're fine. Hello. Yeah. Yes, he did. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Hi. You look live on YouTube. Everything's working. Okay, we have some technical difficulties at the beginning. For some reason, Entropy is not going live for me. So if you were to send a super chat that way, it'll say that I'm offline, which is a little frustrating. Don't know why that's happening. I will have to contact the lovely people over at Entropy, talk to Rachel, and figure out what's going on that front. Don't know what it is.
But Prude has to buy me a coffee, and of course, you could subscribe to his Subscribe Star.
Yeah. I'm not. I mean, This is date. I literally just got a job, so I'm not like I'm hurting, but I'm not hurting. So I'm not too worried. But if you want to send it through Entropy, I can just check the revenue section, and I will be able to see your chat, even if Entropy says I am not currently streaming. I am. So if you want to do it that way, the links are down below in the description. That's all I'm going to say about it. And now we're back. So this is episode 130. And what a fitting title. What a fitting title. The Wheel of Fatigue is very real.
It's like that Cream album, Wheels of Fire.
Except we're all tired.
Yeah.
We're all tired.
Yeah.
That's very true. We're all tired. That's not, I'm not tired. I woke up super early this morning, and I will be as normie as possible. So I woke up super early this morning. I went to a coffee shop with friends before I went to work. So, I got up at like 5 o'clock. Coffee shop opened at 6. It was a great time. They can't take that away from me. You can't take away my time from my friends, just like you can't take away my time with my friends on the internet as well. So what a good time to be around. Work is fun because it's 2025 in the year of our Lord, and I work in manufacturing, which is very strange. So very happy.
Really, eh?
Yeah, I literally, I work at a factory, although I don't do like actual floor factory work. I do finance work for them, but nevertheless.
Oh, okay. You're not you're not like a chud on the line.
No, I am not a chud on the line. I am a chud behind a giant 2-monitor setup of Excel spreadsheets. So I'm doing what I usually do. But Vulpus Persona tells us that he put on his best jeans for this. Do we want to start with that? Can we just start with the obvious? That the unbearable whiteness of an American Eagle ad got everyone talking. And it's not like advertisements people aren't... it's not like most ad men aren't shit libs. It's not like they didn't know what they were doing.
Everything is just designed to just generate discourse nowadays. Like every movie is made, every album, every video game. The only way that people can actually make money in the sort of proper culture industry nowadays is if you have some sort of like discourse bauble attached to it, which is what, before we get into the Burnout Society, I actually wanted to read this thread by Schwab that I'll later on. But
do you want to just link it to me and I'll put it up on screen?
Yeah.
Let's do that. And I can remove this.
There you go. No, we'll do it later. But what did you want to say about the?
He discoursed across the room chuddishly. That's very true.
Like it's Sydney Sweeney. It's not like white women have left this sort of like pantheon of pop culture idols. It's just it's just supremely stupid to me.
I think it's just I think everyone's kind of realized at this point in time, oh, they really do hate you. That's really all I have to add to it, was just that, like, it's been this coordinated and it is coordinated. I mean, like the media has responded in kind, from Black Twitter to, if you were to go right now onto like your default browser where like MSN is on like the main page or whatever, it's going to show you this kind of discourse. And I'm so unplugged from pop culture. The only pop culture I know of is literally from my time on Twitter.
Yeah.
And as
same.
Gio and I jokingly say, although we try to avoid it, we're on Twitter. So you don't have to be. Jeans that says I heart DA on them. I don't have jeans that say I heart DA, but I do have a t-shirt that says I paused my digital archipelago to be here. So if you use the promo code FROG15 right now, you get 15% off your order on the merch link down below. You too can get a digital archipelago t-shirt. That 15% off code is good until the end of August. So do not worry. You've got a lot of time to put things out on there. And in fact, I'm literally going to put it on screen right now. And it'll scroll right across. But there you go. If you use Frog15 right now, you guys can get yourself an easy 15% off 15% discount on the Teespring store down below. Yeah. What if I get a digital archipelago tattoo? Well, Pac-Man Respecter, please don't. I'm not a big tattoo guy. I don't know about you, Gio. I'm not a tattoo.
I'm indifferent. I used to like tattoos, but not really. No, I thought better of it. I mean, if you wanted to,
I'm not
fine.
a fan.
Yeah. Especially like for a fandom thing, it's not.
Yeah, no, please don't. Everyone knows my positions on like social on social parasocial shit. I literally had a guy come up to me with a t-shirt one time that says, of course I come fast, I have fish to catch. And I have never been more mortified in my entire life.
That was like the Count Dankula video on that one famous competition fisherman. And like, it was increasingly more obscure, like the hat. And the best one was, me and the fish have come into an uncomfortable agreement against women.
The fish and I have an uneasy alliance against women. You can buy that hat. I need to make that hat a reality with my like little froggish profile picture, and just put it on there. It's like, me and the frogs have entered an uneasy alliance against women.
But it's just so stupid.
I'm gonna go design that right now, actually.
Yeah, but it's just so stupid thinking about like the white supremacy of Sydney Sweeney and American jeans, when you still have advertisers. Don't you have like Beyonce doing the whole country thing and like pretending to wear jeans? And it's just it's stupid. It's there's always been that sort of pop critique in academia going back at least a few decades, if not longer. But there really is like, I know, like, for some reason, it seems that the figure of the white woman is in particularly an object of scorn in our culture nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
And is it because that they were the first, or rather they're perceived as being like the first to defect to the progressive stack? Or is it just that it's indicative of, well, if people like white women too much, then it's sort of like the project collapses? I don't know. Like, it seems like, I noticed like throughout the 2010s, even before Gamergate, it seems that like it was just, if you didn't have anything really original or creative, you could always, either left or right, you can make a grift off of hating white women all day. It just seems like that's the thing, It is
the most acceptable thing, to say the least. And that's really all that it's going to be. I do find it funny that this has been the thing that they've talked about here in the United States. Like, this has been the go-to hot flashpoint form of discourse outside of maybe I think Nancy Mace is going to announce her candidacy to run for governor of South Carolina, which means you can literally say tits for 26. It'll be a good time. Other than that,
she's going to get crushed. Let's be real.
Well, the Carolinas, both North and South, have so many wonky, weird characters representing them on a federal and state and local level. I think she's got a chance. And so, no, actually, I think she'll do fine. And we'll get more of that girl boss conservatism that makes me want to gouge my eyes out. So I'm really excited for that.
I'm sure they could find like this is what I hate about I know I was defending white women, but like, I just hate like the girl boss conservative thing. Like, they can find smarter ones. Like, can't they find like, I mean, this is a totally unreasonable request, but like, they could find, I don't know, like a Helen Andrews or someone of that intelligence. Like, I don't know, man. Although I shall say Marjorie Taylor Greene, as much as I think she's kind of like a bit ridiculous, she has been posting some pretty good things.
She represents Georgia.
Yeah.
The district in Georgia.
She looks like a Georgian, like my aunt spent a lot of time in Georgia, and that's why she keeps getting she like looks like, you know, that sort of like Sunbelt Marjorie Taylor Greene aristocratic are two words that shouldn't
She
go
looks
together.
like a man. I think that's okay and safe to say. Marjorie Taylor Greene looks very mannish. She looks like that she should be managing a 7-Eleven or running the QuickBooks behind your diesel automotive repair shop in like Northeast Georgia, who tells you like, hey, hon, I can help you with that, while she takes a long drag of a cigarette before her giant mannish hands like take the torque wrench from you. That's what she looks like. I will talk shit. I will, because why? There's a dime a dozen Marjorie Taylor Greenes in the American South. And that country, and that part of the country runs off high tea white women. And it's very true. In a former life, Marjorie Taylor Greene would be one of the most successful realtors in all of Georgia.
Oh, really?
Probably.
Oh, man.
There are a lot of women like her.
That's how Marco Rubio got ahead in Florida, because all the car dealerships loved him for some reason.
They do.
Yeah.
Prude gets angrier the better his personal life gets. This is very true. Actually, this is not true. I'd actually been a really depressed piece of garbage for like the last couple of weeks. And then everything providentially lined up for me in the series of like 6 days in a row. And I was like, I have been such an asshole for like the last like month and a half. And it has been awful, to say the least. So no, my personal life is great. I'm just fired up, so to speak. So no, it's really tragic that this whole like moderately attractive white woman is become the ire for liberals to do Radio Rwanda about white people in the United States. Whilst at the same time, we've had like 2 or 3 different shootings happen in downtown New York. One of them allegedly saying Free Palestine, another one trying to go towards NFL with motives yet unclear. And now we're talking about gun violence again, despite the fact that it's a Blasian man, black and Asian man from Las Vegas, who had a permit.
CRK finally snapped?
No, I
was going to make that joke. I was not going to make that joke. No, listen, I still respect CRK.
Finally, Fed posted.
Oh man, I was debating. Like, listen, me and CRK are still cool. I think he's a great guy, but I don't know. I was so tempted.
You were ready. You were ready. It's okay. Shh. It's okay.
But I noticed. But do you have any thoughts? That's terrible. He went in guns blazing. Terrible. That's terrible. We shouldn't make fun of this. This is
Tiger Woods finally lost it, huh?
Like, I don't know. I'm cross-proof because, I mean, from what I know, like, Blackstone has, like, listen, I would never, I'm not condoning anything.
If you want to do like amateur noticing like Steve Saylor, this wasn't the black guy part of him that decided to do this. This is just hop of violence. This is hop of violence. This is another Supreme Gentleman moment.
It's the same thing with Chuck Mangione or whatever his name is.
Luigi Manion.
Chuck Mangione actually died.
Yeah, he just died a couple like the other week ago.
Yeah, and by the way, if you want the best deep dive on the history, the psychology, the philosophy of professional wrestling, my content-minded episode, I think, is right up there with a lot of more deeper analysis into professional wrestling. So episode 84 of Content Minded, go and check it out. But it's the same debate with Mangione. It's like, of course you're not, I mean, unless you're like some deranged leftist that it's like, you're like, they're literally like fawning and getting titillated over Mangione. But like, of course you don't want to, I'm not condoning any violent action. Of course, that goes without saying, because I think like there's a difference between a huge corporate structure and people that are just functionaries that are working. And granted, like, you can make a case about the morality of working for these corporations, but at the end of the day, they're just average people. Like, maybe the CEO is a bit different, but even still, like, I think like the system itself is much more abstract to level a critique against in terms of just committing violence against people that are working. But at the same time, like, this Blackstone company, it's not exactly like, it's not exactly, they're not, I mean, of course they've committed a lot of, evil in the world, but not that you should condone this type of action, because of course, in terms of the social fabric, you don't want people going out there and, like, I notice it seems that a lot of people, it's the same with the Sydney Sweeney thing, the discourse around it in a weird way, where a lot of people are trying to, like, on the political left, they're trying to, like, create this thing where, because Trump was elected, like, quote unquote wokeness or whatever you want to call it, like, it went away, like transnational progressive activism, when it never, like, really went away. And there's this tweet I saw the other today where people were with this viral tweet where this guy's like, being nice and charitable, and that hasn't worked. Now we have to be mean and angry. It's like, when were you not mean and vindictive and angry? It's stupid, right? But it's the same thing where, as the sort of issues are still in the background, I do notice that a lot of these mass fun posters, I think they are, like, it's very muddled and wrong-headed, but there is sort of like a class warfare element that they're going with now, because I think, like, the other sort of, like, baubles of transnational progressivism didn't, like, really pan out, or when it actually translated to very horrendous acts, like horrendous tragedies, like what happened, was it Nashville, the Decepticon one?
Yeah.
Like, it, like, that isn't an easy sell to people, as opposed to an economic grievance. And, I mean, but then again, like I say, like, the whole system itself is corrupted, and taking your, going out and committing something against a particular office isn't going to really do anything. But I think, like, it's not like, I'm not comparing the two, but it almost reminds me of the economic anxiety that happened in the 80s when, like, the farmers got shit canned by Reagan, and you had the militia movement in the 1990s. Like, it doesn't seem the left is primed to go through that thing, because of course a lot of major institutions and organs of the state still give them props and cover. But it does seem that they're almost going through a similar moment. You know what I mean? Although the difference being is that the state did everything in its power during the Clinton years to crush the militia movement. Not to say, like, I condone
they were
the
very
militia movement or anything.
successful. I mean, Janet Reno's DOJ literally lied and stole and fabricated evidence to put down gun clubs and other things under accusations that they were, these evil, terrible,
trying to take over America or whatever.
Well, and also, like, you had the successful, scares or organizations, like the Order and things that they could easily
and
implicate
Waco and Ruby Ridge.
Well, not even that. I'm just talking about, like, the more, like, hardcore, like, white nationalist stuff in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
Like, that stuff would become the default thing to call a lot of these groups and movements. They're like, oh, well, they're like associated with so-and-so. And I mean, they still do the same thing today. It doesn't matter what you do. Like, you could go down to do Hurricane Helene relief like some guys did, and they're still going to call you whatever the hell that they want. And I mean, like, again, it just illustrates that it doesn't matter. This is going to just come down to ethnic resentment, and we know this already. On top of all this, at the same time, right? Like, this is the stories that are happening in the U.S. is that we have a shooting that it seems definitely inspired for economic purposes, or it certainly looks that way. And then on top of all that, you have the White House is doing Wojak memes and talking about recruiting for ICE, which they're taking, or border, or what do they call them, deportation agents right now. So, I mean, you've got options if you want to be something. But at the same time, right, we have the Online Safety Act happening over in Britain, which, of course, is under the guise, as they've always said, to protect children. And in fact, I think some member of parliament on Labour had said, every time you use a VPN, like a child dies. And it's just like, we're past the point of acknowledging
not children on the streets though, when it comes to
I don't know, about gangs and things like that. What about that? And of course that's the things that gets you in jail. And I've noticed that numerous screenshots of people showing off the protests in Epping and the rest, that that's been effectively turned off. They've managed to suppress a good deal of the British internet, at least for social media access. And I know that this has and of course the guise was like pornography and things like that initially, which even if you're trying to ban porn, I think that it's so ubiquitous to get around it anyway. Good luck. And then on top of all that, right, you still have the main core problem, which is that this is going to be used to censor, track, and trace online dissent and those complaining about the most obvious issue, which is the ethnic replacement and the systemic ethnic rape gangs that exist inside of Britain. And you can't really talk about that over there without being banned, without being arrested, without being visited by His Majesty's government. And that's a huge problem. And so that's what's happening right now. And I think I wonder if that's partially why Twitter has been broken over the last day and a half since the act has come on there. Notifications have been broken. So many other things have been absolutely busted. Don't know if it's just the usual Twitter fucky wucky or something else, but it certainly feels that way. And it's particularly strange that despite America being in a demographically worse position than virtually every other European country, it seems that for some odd reason, whether by the structure of the American Constitution or just our political system, we've been able to resist some of the worst aspects of this more than our neighbors. I know Canada has floated a very similar online harms bill in the past. I think you guys are having a debate about one soon. I know there's a very similar law that's been proposed by a few Democrats in Congress. So, I mean, there seems to be a very coordinated effort to mimic or mirror similar laws and policies across the Anglosphere.
This, I think, relates to the shooter, because I think that the left, they realize that sort of rainbow capitalism isn't really doing them any good. And so they're going to give them a little bit of a release valve by going after corporations, specifically Wall Street fat cats. And also I think the Trump, I mean, you people aren't probably, you don't want to hear this, but the Trump fumbling of the Epstein thing gives them a lot of carte blanche to create this typical old school social labor socialist version of conspiracy theory, which, I mean, no doubt corporations control both sides. Let's be real. There's not it's not everything that parapolitics people say is wrong. I think they have wrong conclusions about certain things, but not everything they say is wrong. But I think it goes to the rest of the Anglosphere, although it's a little bit harder in America, although America, I think, is on maybe a 4 to 5 year delay. It seems that they're clamping down when people's actual, especially as the boomers start to fade away, when things really get economically desperate, it seems that that's when they're going to clamp down dissent the most. And also the fact when the sort of true sort of poison fruits of globalization comes home to roost, that's also going to be when you criticize dissent against it the most, even though for example in the UK, where there's real world violence happening against people in Britain, in the UK, right, that's when you go and you start going crazy and you frame everything as racist, and racism itself is a big public concern as opposed to the real physical, actual real world violence of people that you're bringing in by the hundreds of thousands, in some cases millions. So it's it becomes a sort of internet containment zone where you can't really control the whole apparatus, but you can certainly try to make it difficult for people to create the sort of air of mass, how should you put it, there's sort of alternative media is very good at creating airs of suspicion against very powerful people who have very enforced consensus around certain belief systems in terms of how the workings of transnational progressivism actually operates. The alternative media is very good at on a very grassroots level, although I would say that some people obviously are bought off in the alternative media. I'm not denying that. but they're very good at creating a sort of grassroots response to a lot of issues that were very taboo, or rather couldn't really see the light of day in the media apparatus that was controlled. And so you have this attempt to discredit, but then that doesn't really work because it's very hard to argue against claims by the alternative media, because the act of suppressing alternative media is in itself a part of that conspiracy. So the only way to really do it is to make it the penalties to speak out very severe, or to make the sort of
or to make it impossible to speak out physically.
Exactly.
I mean,
or make it impossible.
That seems to be the game here. Is that we cannot, like, no one believes British state-run media. No one believes what LBC has to say, what the BBC has to say, what anyone has to do. And like even now, right?
It's
like
hyper-normalization, really.
Exactly right. And also like
the difference is in Canada, really quickly, Prude.
Go ahead.
In Canada, there's a significant amount of population that actually does believe what the CBC says, which is why we're like kind of fucked. But like,
well, I'm sure there's a significant population in Britain that believes whatever the BBC has to put out too.
Yeah, true.
I mean, it's the same thing here. Like, I mean, it is an older, distinctly more progressive. Like it's white liberals that believe it more than anybody.
Yeah.
And they happen to have the most influence and sway still in left-wing institutions, despite the fact that they are chattering and chittering on for their own ethnic destruction. But for them, that's basically the grace of absolution and nothing more, nothing less.
Right.
But like in Britain too, and at least how I see it is that because there is such a degree of disintermediation. And yeah, there are people that you may not like or whatever, but like they still cause problems. Like you can say whatever you want, but I'm pretty sure that the British state would love to probably just deport Tommy Robinson and never deal with him again. And I'm sure that like this Online Safety Act really fucks over like Carl and his business, or it will, you know, like, so basically the ability to have anything that looks like a safe alternative, or even just a relatively non-progressive platform, doesn't functionally get to exist anymore. And so it's like, well, if I can't replace you with my own guy, I'm just going to pull the plug. And that definitely seems like the strategy here. And it doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon, because why would it? It seems to be the most effective tool that they have. And they have a much stronger security state than we do, at least one that's publicly facing. You can't really get that kind of secure, like, you know, I'm never going to have, I mean, the FBI could easily knock on my door one day for things that I say or do, but they're never going to come at my door for saying what I say on Twitter. Like, I'm never going to get arrested by the FBI, at least right now, unless Democrats win, then maybe I will. Where, you know, I'm going to say something along the lines of like, a lot of Americans get exploited by ethnic nepotism that gets disguised in the name of entrepreneurship, the free market, and trade. Which is true, you know, and a mutual of mine over at New Founding, Nathan Halberstadt, has been going really hard about the fact that there are these like entire recruiting industries, so that companies buy an Indian for like $39,000 a year rather than paying an actual American a decent wage working in said industry.
But that's white collar stuff. In Canada, we have that for like Tim Hortons.
We have the same thing too. I mean, like, come on, like young people are. I mean, this is something that even I think the like normie Republicans are kind of just like, I guess I would say more on Twitter conservatives like Charlie Kirk, who has TPUSA and is talking about a lot of these issues that you would see on our side of Twitter, where it's just like the average age of the American home buyer is 38 years old. The system
it's going to be 40 soon, if I recall.
The system is fundamentally unstable. Like, the only way I'm ever going to be able to buy a house is if somehow they give a white guy like a Department of Housing and Urban Development voucher, or I inherit a home from some long lost family member. The odds of me owning one,
Are you going to buy a home with your wife or future wife?
I would love to be able to buy a home with my wife. It may just take me 10 fucking years.
Oh my God.
You know, like, I don't know. And where I live, if I do buy a house with my wife, I will probably move. Just
close
because
to your parents? Or?
No. I mean, like, I'll move in the sense that like I'm going to probably move somewhere that's more affordable than where I live now. And also because like I don't know where things are going in Texas either. I have a lot of concerns.
That's insane to say like Texas is no longer affordable. That's
well,
like,
it is affordable, but also like depending on where you live in Texas, like
right.
Either the metroplex of the Dallas-Fort Worth area is continuing to expand, and a lot of cities and towns. Here's another prude rant from working in government. A lot of cities and towns that have a zero growth mindset end up screwing themselves because they don't consider the ramifications of how developers and how certain development companies will just screw them over. Like there are a lot of towns I've worked with in my job, in my previous job working in local government, where I would work with towns that are like, well, we don't really want to do anything, or worse, they would like not have their shit together. So basically, large developments that were happening around them, they could have brought them like hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in, I don't know, like ad valorem tax revenue or utilities or land or whatever, because they weren't doing anything to put themselves ready for this development. It's going to come whether you like it or not. Like it was happening. It was being built.
Highlight Sean's comment really when you're done.
Yeah, I can do that real quick. Yeah. Reverse mortgaging all their homes to the banks and they'll be sold as private equity. The survivors will inherit number. Just squat. It's my human right. I don't want to squat. I don't, but I get the point. So anyways, these towns would basically go out and not do anything. And so when the local developers realized, oh, these guys aren't going to do anything because they don't have their act together, they would just institute their own like water districts and they would start setting up their own infrastructure because they could afford it. And they're like, well, now we don't ever need to rely on the town. And this is better for us because now all of a sudden I never have to worry about the consequences of dealing with that particular government. And it's just like, oh, well, that is awful because now that town gets screwed out of much needed revenue that they could have used for whatever the roads, sewage system, utilities, etc. And that's going to be the problem with a lot of places. Like even before that, when I always drive a lot in the jobs where I live because I still live in a semi-rural area. But I mean, it's rapidly developing into a major urban center, or at least outskirts of it. And it becomes really frustrating because now all of a sudden you're seeing all these like large farms that have been owned by families that have been here since like before the Texas Revolution. And they're all being just bought off for like single, like they're being bought off for apartments and duplexes and condos. And it's just like, I get it, but it's just like, it's the nature of the game. And I don't like that for obvious reasons. Cause it's just like, oh, more renters, more people that don't want to live in the Metroplex or more people that can't afford to live in the Metroplex. So everyone, like the cycle of gentrification more or less continues. And the people that have lived here for forever get priced out of their own homes. And it doesn't matter what they kind of do to go the other direction about it. Like there's still not a lot of winning on any of it.
Is Midland, Texas still becoming a wasteland? In Midland?
Midland has grown a lot.
Really, eh?
Yeah, as far as I know.
Interesting.
I have some family that live there. They work in the oil industry, and it's been
because in the 80s and 90s they weren't doing too good. Midland, Texas.
Well, Midland also got to experience like the shale oil boom, and they did quite well for themselves. And Midland, Odessa, that whole area, they're quite fine now. Probably not what it was like in the 1980s. So
that was like. Do you ever watch that film Hell or High Water?
No.
That's a great film. That's a great modern cowboy film, but it does have like it was post 2008 about like the economic disparity of like these predatory banks trying to like sleuth old people out of the land that they have with oil, and they have to rob banks to like pay back the bank to get their land back. It's a very good film. I love it. Like the guy that was what's his name? He was pretty good. The crazy brother. He played in Pandorum, and I think he was in no, he wasn't in Breaking Bad, but I forget what else he was in. He was a pretty good character, but no, but yeah, so I think like there is something that you said, again, not that I'm justifying mass fun posting, obviously, but like there is something to be said of younger generations realizing that economically they're never going to be able to really own anything, and the system has been so cooked for so long that you will see these events happening. And I think that it's probably from a sheer like value neutral. I know people, by the way, last episode, I know people were memeing on me for saying that a lot, but like from a sheer like value neutral analysis point of view, you know,
I wouldn't be surprised if there's more of this to come, like violence wise.
It would almost be in the left's best interest to go back to that like older like Bernie Sanders, Jeremy Corbyn economic socialism platform for the challenges that are going to face Americans and people in the Anglosphere in the Western world, a lot. And I think like the fact that like the Trump administration is sort of like given them an air of suspicion of like the right wing is winning, quote unquote, which I mean, really, come on. Like it gives them a huge cover. And I think that if they were to rein in a lot of the culture war stuff in favor of blaming very rich people, that's the kill shot for any sort of Democrat. And sorry, I didn't mean to say it. I didn't mean to say that pun. No, I'm sorry. I'm not making fun of what happened, but like figure of speech, that is like the really winning strategy for any Democrat to come out in 2028 is to like can all of the social issue stuff.
Well, see, that's the really interesting thing is that that seems to be the case to double down on that kind of hardcore progressivism, because you have like
Dark
Cory
woke.
Booker in the Senate saying that like the Democratic Party is compliant in an authoritarian regime, which makes me think that Booker is maybe angling for a run in 28. Could be wrong, but like even then, like the big issues that are going to, it will be a social issue election for Dems, I think, for at least for the primaries in 26 and 28, because it's going to be questions of like, well, where do you stand on Palestine? Where do you stand on like, would you pardon Luigi Manion? I wonder if that question gets asked in the 28 primary, because like
they will
because everyone needs to remember, like was it 2016 or was it 2020 where it was 2016. Everyone was asking Democrats, does your healthcare plan include healthcare for illegal immigrants? Right. And they all raised their hands. I would not be surprised if pardoning Luigi Manion is a part of their 28 platform, or like, cutting aid to Israel or whatever. Like, any position that is meant to placate sort of this kind of base that is pro, more political violence. I think that they kind of have to.
Yeah. You know who's great on this? You people are going to fucking hate me for this, saying this. You people are going to hate me because I think I might get him on Content Minded one day. Have you ever heard of Deep Left Joe Call, Prude?
Deep Left Joe Call?
Yeah.
No, I have not.
Well, he's a pretty good Substacker. He used to do YouTube videos, but like I wouldn't say he's like Hanania or whatever. He's like way smarter than Hanania, but like
okay.
He's like he has a great point about if the Democrats were in America to sort of like get rid of their fetish for mass immigration, or at least to curb it somewhat, and to like realize that maybe it's in the best interest to serve the American working class, the Republicans in Trump and the right wing in America would be totally fucked. Like if they did it like a sort of like old school labor socialism turn with not giving like gibs to illegal immigrants or whatever, it's like, I hate to say it, that would be a winning platform. That would be like a winning sloppulous platform. Because unfortunately, even though Trump has, I would think, to be charitable to Donald Trump, I would say that Trump has done a fair bit more than a lot of other Republicans in terms of giving a nod to like not your typical like corporate friendly neoliberal like conservatard platform, but he still is beholden, I think, to certain interests where the thought of like reining in certain things are unthinkable. So I think like the Democrats are in a position where they could be a party of like the working class once again, if they didn't alienate those very working class people so thoroughly and so viscerally and filled with hatred and venom. But unfortunately, like a lot of the coalition in the left in America and really throughout the Western world in general, they can't get over their hatred of, people
of working class whites.
Exactly. And so it won't happen. But if you do have like a sea change where you could normalize a more pro-friendly, like, working class and white working class platform that isn't fetishizing mass immigration as a key tenet of the whole thing, which again is a fantasy. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, like
I don't see, never say never, but like
I just don't see it happening on the same grounds that like I don't see them ever winning back like young men because.
Well, the mass immigration thing's kind of the point. Like, that's
not even just the mass immigration thing, but also like young men who are not white have also kind of swung rightward. Like when we're talking about Gen Z is an incredibly diverse, non-white population, and even the average Gen Z guy, it's really two pathways for you. You're either just sort of like
you're an anime Austrian painter fan, or you're like,
or you've turned out. Like there's not really a big in between, right? And even I mean, the white Gen Z guys are the most conservative out of all of them, but like there is this huge like sort of shift. And the reason why I bring all this up is because it's just like, oh well, if this is where we're at, so to speak, then we're in a really weird spot. Because it's just like no one, even if you're a diehard progressive, like there's not enough like testosterone in you anyways to really care. I mean, like the whole like, oh well, what do we do about winning back young men? I'm like, I don't know. Maybe don't put some large obese Mexican woman telling me how to win you back, because I don't even think like Gen Z progressives like Dean Withers find Snorlax particularly attractive, despite the Tom 777 jokes that are about there. It's just like no, like I think that that they're going to have to double down. Because that kind of...
Yeah, Owen referred to the Jens tweet, which is accurate.
Yeah, that too. And it's just like, so when you're in a position, politically speaking, where you believe that you've been living under fascism and that fascism has been normalized, the only thing that's really acceptable in response per your own mythos and your own, political memeplex is literally just to be... violent.
That's what they say all the time, by the way. That's like literally what they tweet about.
They do.
Yeah.
I mean, this is why there is such a... I mean, hell, I was at a half-priced books not too long ago because I remembered I had a lovely little gift card from some friends. And I love half-priced books because I can find some real gem of antique books in there that people just leave and drop off. I went to my half-price books. I am dressed in slacks and a dress shirt because I just got back from an interview. I dressed down just a tad to go out, and lo and behold, I am walking in, and you've got your like little pride rainbow colored lanyards on, some of the staff, and there is someone working there with it says a free Luigi button on her shirt. And I'm like, ooh.
Can you imagine a right winger doing that in public?
No, I can't.
No,
which is kind of depressing. I would. That'd be neat, but I don't think that that's ever gonna happen. Like, there's like French right-wing bookstores, and it's just like, man, that's so tragic that such a thing can't exist in the United States.
That was like Egg White,
because it would get firebombed within a week.
No, that was like Egg White did that Messarian song as a joke. He wasn't like, it was a joke. He wasn't endorsing Alex Messarian or what he did, but he literally got a knock on the door from the FBI for that song. Like, he literally, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, I mean, it's
like, who has the cultural capital here? And it's like, we already know this.
Yeah,
it's the left.
No, but that's what I mean. I think like if you were to have a situation where the economics of the vast majority of young people in the Western world, they naturally would have to shift. But I don't think that, you know what I mean? Like they have the ability to, but certainly smarter people, I think, on the left are starting to think about this. And like the whole debate, like, like I hate the term, like, but it is an accurate term, like woke, more correct. There's a lot of people that are saying, like, who cares about this debate about like why the left needs young men or whatever. It's like, I hate to say it, but that's kind of the truth. Like the broader coalition of the left in most Western countries, it's not that they don't need young men, but their politics are so beyond.
They just need young ethnic men.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's an easy get. But I think like the only problem I could really see in America would be 4th or 5th generation Latino young men who are like sort of in the middle class. America does have Hispanic current just as much as it does have an African American current. And so I think like that could, like in places like Texas and Florida, that could definitely present an electoral problem.
It does. I mean, it already has
yeah.
in the last 2 presidential elections because
Yeah.
the Rio Grande Valley had swung so far to the right in both
Yeah.
2016, 2020, and well, actually not so much 2016, 2020 and 2024, yes. Like you compare 2016's parts in some of the bluer Rio Grande Valley communities, and then you compare it to 2020 or even 24, it boiled down to immigration. And I think that
Yeah.
this just, it goes to show that Scott Greer's essay about like having pro-white policies tends to get you voters on other side, or
But
like
spoken through the mouth of a Hispanic person.
Well, no, I mean,
yeah.
well, yeah, but also like if you're
Yeah.
just saying things that are going to help white people, odds are it's probably going to help well-to-do middle-class Hispanics and blacks.
Of course.
Are they
yeah.
ever going to probably acknowledge that? Probably not really. But I mean, are they going to see it? Because I mean, immigration became the issue that the Rio Grande Valley voted on, and that place is like 86% Hispanic in most places, if not more. And it's just like, okay, well, clearly, you know, everyone wants to be the last guy off the boat, yes, but also at the same time, you also don't want your own kids to get shot up and killed or put into drugs or whatever.
Yeah, no, but that's what it. Yeah, exactly. And I think that it's interesting.
Not
because
that I'm an embracing of this heckin' multicultural working class populism, but that seems to be the route that got Trump to victory.
But I think even after Trump, the sort of the certain messages can work on different populations, but not others. Like the ICE raids can work for a while, and it's very effective propaganda for certain elements of the left's coalition.
It's so Kino.
Well, but in terms of like from the position of the left, though,
I know.
The air of suspicion of like a nebulous concept such as fascism, I think like in the next 3 years,
Miller, I'm begging you, drop a little dark age at it.
But like I think when Trump is gone in 3 years, I think that messaging won't work, but an economic populist messaging will always work at all times, regardless of like context of any different particular decade or era. And I think like if there's smart enough people in the coalition of the political left, especially in America, then it's a much different situation in the UK and here in Canada and elsewhere, because like even in Canada, like there really is no populist.
No one represents you.
No, I've lived my whole life without anybody like really representing me or anybody on the political right in Canada. But like in America, you still have a lot of people on the political right, like in the Republican Party. Like even though they may just be pulling a barrel over, wool over your eyes,
yeah,
they'll still say things about mass immigration. They'll still say things about like abortion, for example. But in the Anglosphere, even in Britain, like you'll have working class populist people, like but the difference being is that I think like as America transforms along the route of a lot of other Western nations, then an economically populist message will almost naturally have to come about, especially when the boomers are gone. So it's going to be very contentious whether like people on the political right can embrace that as well. Like but
I've noticed lately that there has been this I noticed this in the Carlson Charlie Kirk discussion where everyone and their mother, left wing or right wing, has decided, and with valid reason to some extent, that the public Girardian scapegoat is going to be the baby boomer. Like Tucker Carlson just gave his own take about like, I was raised by baby boomers, I know baby boomers, they're the worst people ever. But there's also like this like slightly overtly online kind of coded like dog whistle when it comes to say like casual anti-Semitism as well, which I mean it gets embraced as well by people like George Galloway in Britain, but he's also like an anti-white, like ethnic, like ethnically betraying socialist that will run in whatever place that he can and like run on.
He's good in geopolitics.
He's good at politicking to various demographics. Yes.
Yeah.
Whereas like Tucker Carlson's talking about usury and stuff, and I'm like, I know what you're talking about. I don't know how well this plays to a larger audience, except for those that might be watching you on the internet. I could be wrong because again, I'm not in that circle.
Well, Michael Fortino brings up a good point, although I wouldn't go as far because I don't want to like totally pour scorn on our friends in America, but like American political right, we don't have a right wing. I mean, there is
we don't.
It's true. Like they are sort of like the right side of liberalism.
We have liberal right.
Yeah, of course.
That's it. Yeah. There is no actual right wing.
I mean, it's
when there is the like Phalanges Party of the United States, maybe we'll have a discussion. But like politically speaking, there isn't going to be anything like that.
Unless you're like in the UK, like you have like populists or you have like Rupert Lowe or whatever.
And they have that Restore Britain Party or whatever.
But like in Canada, for example, like the Conservatives, I forget what it was. It may have been Black Horse or it may have been someone else I think it was John Carter actually, who was talking about working with like behind the scenes, like doing like what you did with like the Republican Party in Texas.
Yeah.
Like he's like, when you like meet people that are like actual politicians in the Conservative Party here, they literally do not believe in anything. Like they literally don't believe in anything. So it's like they just believe in like we're gonna win another election, even though they don't. And it's like, yeah,
they're like Cowboys fans. Every year they say it's going to be their year, and then
in our case, it's like Toronto Maple Leafs fans.
Yeah,
it's going to be our year. Although I will say they have beefed up their defensive line, so Brad Treliving's doing somewhat of a good job. People are always belly aching about Mitch Marner and the 100 points, the 100 points. But Mitch Marner could not get it done in the playoffs. So who fucking cares about Mitch Marner's 100 points? It does. Sorry, Prude. Sorry. Let's talk. We have more than a month before hockey season, so I will spare you. So Sydney Sweeney, though, I think the whole discourse is ridiculous.
It's deliberately designed to create discourse, and I said this last night with Dimes, where these advertise like everyone knows that there is a cultural commentary industry. Mm-hmm. And like, if you're someone who makes their full-time job off of this, say like the quartering, I'm using him as an example. I don't have anything personally negative to say about the quartering. I don't. I'm sure that I could come up with something in the same way that someone could easily come up with something bad about me. So in the sake of charity, I'm trying not to be an asshole. But like, if you're someone like Jeremy from the quartering, or if you're someone like, I don't know, Mahler or whatever, you are making your livelihood and making thousands of dollars a week in a culture commentary industry that relies on your product being shitty and not going anywhere, which is why I deeply believe I've been told that the Superman movie is not good. I'm not going to watch it. I did have to laugh that apparently James Gunn goes out of his way to say, to the cameras that this movie is about immigrants and, we're pro-immigrant here, da-da-da-da-da. And then like the film's big reveal or whatever is that like, actually, Superman, we wanted you to come to Earth and like take over this place with your godlike powers. And it's just like, so yeah, immigrants are a problem. Lex Luthor vindicated once again. Who would have guessed?
Doesn't that like violate the whole like original thing about Superman being like cast off into Earth randomly?
Yeah.
That's
so much extra lore has been.
I agree with the PPP review of the Superman movie. James Gunn is delivering you slop, and they had to destroy the vision of Zack. Was it Zack Snyder? Is that his name?
Zack Snyder.
Zack Snyder gave you mythos. He gave you the story of Christianity. He gave you Nietzsche's Zarathustra. He gave you the death of God. He gave you this all-encompassing mythos, but you didn't want it. People that are fans of cape shit did not want it. They wanted slop. They wanted hokey, kitschy slop with some correct political... But anyways, so...
I mean, that's just fundamentally true. But I mean, because there's this cultural industry, everyone got to talk about fucking American Eagle. And in the same way that like fucking Steak and Shake with all their problems, they're just like, well, we're pro MAGA now. We're pro Tallow, and we've got our almost Gothic-esque mid-century text to go along with it. And it's just like, okay, like fine, that's the way things are going to be. And they know about it because they know that people like us, and by extension, a lot of Twitter, gets to generate the clicks and the links, and we're the new way because we have become the, virulent, or we become the transmission vector for any sort of contagion.
Yeah, I said this in my wrestling podcast lately. Like it's I'm not going to say exactly what Sam Hyde said, but you remember that one Sam Hyde clip where he's like, I want my slop to be based. It's like, you know, you should like aim for something higher. It's sort of like this debate I saw recently where some trad account was like posting about like beauty and like using Picasso as a pejorative, and then some like leftist account posted Gernica, and there was a whole debate over Gernica, and it's like, oh my god, like it's just don't.
I feel like this debate has already been had. Like, this is the other thing too. And I this is why I wrote that essay about pedagogy. It was just like, because we all have a fucking goldfish brain, or because like the next generation comes on to Twitter or comes on to these spaces or comes onto a new forum. They don't remember the previous debate. And they don't remember the previous debates. But why don't they remember the previous debates? Because no one taught them anything. No one told the young people, hey man, we've had this debate before. It sucks. Or, hey man, we've had this discussion before. Here's the polemical engine in which you use to own your libtarded enemies. Like, we don't do that. Instead, we try to repeat a lot of the same stuff that we've done before, and we don't really go anywhere with it, and it's incredibly frustrating.
Like I will say though that, you know, Gernica, I mean, it is like, let's be real, it is communist propaganda. Like, it was commissioned by the Spanish Republicans. It was like the mythology that Picasso built around it with that story about like a soldier asked him about it. Like, that's probably clearly like, you know, dubious at best. But in terms of the history and development of modern art, like Gernica does stand as a real, I would say, feat in what modern art had developed in that time. And so in terms of the mythology of the various experiences of Picasso's own life that he put into Gernica, I think like, obviously you can't, like, even if you are like, you know, a classical art Twitter chat or whatever, like you still have to sort of, from a value neutral perspective, look at, like, I know I'm doing like a media literacy analysis, but like you still have to look at it as a feat of modern art and a feat of how Picasso was responding to the tradition in Spain at the time and the various figures and motifs that he put into Gernica, even if it ultimately does serve a propagandistic message for the Spanish Republicans. You know, I mean, you still can give props where it's due. Like, you can see that later on, Picasso, near the end of his life, became very derivative of himself. Like, he bought into the stardom, celebrity image of Picasso in his work. But in terms of like Gernica as a transformative piece of art in his own career, and really as like Western civilization as a whole, like there's obviously something more going on than just, oh, this is ugly, I hate it, this is an attack on beauty. It's sort of like that debate that happened recently between Paul Talk and Damian Chavez. Like, I was like, I don't mean to catch shade on him, but like, I personally think that Paul Talk came off as having a more nuanced approach, even though Paul Talk can be very cantankerous and go about things in a bad way. I was 100% in his corner in that debate. I'm not gonna be real. I'm gonna stick up for friends where I stick up for friends, even though Paul Talk is kind of like a weird frenemy. Like, I think his position when he was actually talking to Damian was much more objective and nuanced than like replying to Damian with his own artwork and like quote tweeting him and doing the whole flame war thing, like, which they have both mutually done. But, you know, I highly recommend, I forget what the channel is. I'll retweet it for you guys. I think it's on YouTube by now, but just search Paul Talk versus Damian Chavez on Twitter and you'll find it, you know, or Paul Talk will make sure that you find it when you mention him. So, but it's like the whole thing with Gernica. I think like the debate does a massive disservice to this sort of like cultural acumen of people on the political right online by just doing this like blind attack on Picasso being ugly or whatever. You know what I mean? I think like even people that had more nuanced takes like Boreal Baron or what's your name on Twitter, Apocalypse GF or whatever, Dystopian GF on Twitter had a great thread on it that I replied to. You know, it's the same thing with the Sydney Sweeney thing. It's the same thing with anything. I think that being caught up in a lot of these discourse traps, which is actually a good lead up to the thread by Real Human Schwab, I think is worth reading, even though it's about a topic I don't particularly care to talk about, which is the Jeffrey Epstein thing. But like, I think it's a good transition.
And do you have it linked?
It's in the private chat. I sent
okay, cool.
Yeah.
Let me go pull that out. Media private chat. All right, thank you.
Well, Owen Zaleski, it's not kissing up to the standards of the left when it comes to art. I mean, I'm just saying like there's the political reality of Picasso as a communist, and there is what he had done to modern art at the time. And I think that it's not necessarily like, oh, you have to like follow the dictates of leftist academics. I'm just saying that if you want to critique Gernica, I think just saying, well, this work's ugly is not like, I think there's obviously like a deeper critique you can do about the history of modern art in the West at the time. And there is, a valid thing without like playing to the wishes or desires of leftist art historian academics. I just think that, the discourse that I saw was just terrible. That's my...
And a reminder to those listening, you can send a super chat via Entropy, even though it says I'm not streaming. I'm going to have to contact tech support with them for it, but you can send it that way. It takes less of a cut than YouTube. But I'm going to...
we're beating ancient philosophy's brains in right now. No, I'm kidding. I love ancient philosophy.
So do I. He's a great
Twitter space guy. We'll have him on the show one day, maybe.
We should. All right, so he says, Epstein space follows the rubbery cartoon rules of what I call bungle space. This is due to it, like nuclear weapons, being born secret and subject to overclassification. It has no fixed observer, no one knows the full dimensions, and it falls in the domain of the trickster, as described by George Hansen in The Trickster and the Paranormal. Fundamentally, it is siloed from the rational mind. Persons interacting in that domain will produce bungles, imbroglios, inexplicable mysteries, supernatural stupidities, hijinks, and a general theater of the absurd. See Uri Geller's visit to the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory.
Oh, that was good.
Bungle space, a nonsense realm where laws of probability are distorted by obscuring the view of skeptical observers, allowing one to get away with anything. Transcendent entities are found there, exotic modes of being, personas, media events, and technologies that always bounce back into normality or into obscurity when bungled. Bungle dynamics are the root cause of Clown World. Unfortunately, there is no political path forward from this. It is something that will exist so long as disordered technological society persists. Check the literature. Anti-nuclear activism had no effect on nuclear policy. At least on nuclear weapons. If not nuclear or compromat-based mutually assured destruction, it will be some other transcendent, irrational non-object which maintains global order.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed, we are currently transitioning into an equally annihilated robot cartel world order as blackmail inflation makes the old system obsolete. We have more or less received a public admission from operating in bungle space at least twice this past week. That is more transparency in 1 week than we have seen since the end of the Second World War. However it may look, MAGA is still quote-unquote winning, having its own transcendental effect, and Trump is still appearing to the Trumpian theme of revelation of the system. This post is descriptive, not prescriptive. The only thing to help this is have cognitive compromise. There are probably almost no Zionists under the age of 25 in the soillennial experiencing twink death. Once the boomer world order crumbles, there will be a window of opportunity to shrug this all off, or at least bring to heel, but only if we don't fall to the same compromises that made boomers and libtards what they are today. You must continuously refuse compromise. Compromise is an entry point for entropy. You have intuitive convictions that are imbued via the soul as an instrument that tethers man to divinity. The materialist substrate that is designed to present the animal brain with an array of compromising temptations that gradually erode and calcify it. Psychosecurity is the ability to recognize and refuse these. And at the end, Schwab is quoting himself on his article on psychosecurity. But I mean, this is the thing about mythos or anything that comes out there is that we can, and this also goes to the book that Dimes and I were reviewing yesterday about just anti-memetics, is that you can create compromising or these airs of mystery and these cults of personality behind certain characters or things.
Well, like, of course.
It's the same thing that we talked about, I think, with like 9/11 or Waco or any major event that captures the imagination of the 20th
Wendy
century.
Painting's book.
Yeah, like we're never going to know the truth behind these things.
Yeah.
We can get really close. But are we ever going to know the full blanket honest truth with receipts? No. Am I ever going to get the full blanket honest truths of receipts of 9/11 or the Kennedy assassination or the coup or Epstein? No. And those things then allow to take hold of metaphysical properties onto them because I don't know the truth. And we're all going to be standing there in this like inverted version of Pontius Pilate where we're going to be screaming, well, where is the truth? What is the truth? And we're not going to get an answer, even if the answers themselves are somewhat obscured or cleaned in the face. I mean,
yeah.
Pilate asks, well, what is truth? And he's literally looking at truth incarnate in front of him, and it's obscured to him.
It's funny how, like, when you confront real, raw truth, Real Raw News, that it's like that's when you're most skeptical. It's a very like paradoxical thing, almost like when a ceasefire happens, that's when there's the most amount of violence right before the ceasefire, or the fact that like cult members aren't like stupid people. Actually, a lot of cult members have been highly sophisticated and educated white collar people. It's one of those paradoxes of confronting a sort of, which I think it was what Schwab was talking about, confronting a distortion of reality that has a way of like, when I read that, I immediately thought of Nick Land's concept of the hyperstition, of like an autofiction, half mythology, half like willed creation of the internet age, where the more labyrinthine you get down into a topic, the more you have a very like postmodern and perspectival nature to it that goes even beyond like the sort of philosophic category of postmodernism into like what you were saying, Prude, to something that is almost mystical or metaphysical. And there's like a weird arcana to all of these events that people invest their lives into discovering, or rather trying to discover, but coming up with very contradictory solutions. It's very similar to what me and Burden were talking about with House of Leaves, where, you know, imagine if House of Leaves existed, how many academics would sort of like scratch their brains and have different interpretations over the events, like why Novitzon went back into the house to save his brother. It's like you can really drill down in the minutia of something without getting there. And then people naturally, certain people have a skeptical impulse, you know, I say it like whatever it may be, pop nihilism, Thomas Ligotti, Rusty Cole. Maybe some people say, well, you dig far enough to find nothing. Maybe just there's nothing there. I personally think there's a lot of things there. I'm the opposite, right? But I think that there's obviously something to be said of when one chases shadows all day. It's like then the majority of the conscious effort you're making in life is to chase shadows that not go nowhere. They maybe have gone very profoundly into certain directions, but are never going to fully invest into like what this like hard notion of what truth is and what is truth, right? Is it like Plantinga's like war into true belief? Like what is a war into true belief when it comes to these very contentious political events or cultural events? It's like, you know, like that's why Wendy Painting created like one of the greatest works of half scholarship, half autofiction there is. Not autofiction, but half scholarship and half like weird hyperstitional fiction with her book on Timothy McVeigh, because that encompasses so many different perspectives on Oklahoma City that at the very end you're sort of like, okay, what do you really believe? And it's like, well, that's not the point to like take one element of it and predicate worth to that. It's very similar to an article I read in some obscure Tumblr blog about the nature of like school, you know what's, where it's like, what interpretation you're going to land on. Is it fucking listening to Marilyn Manson? Is it guns? Is it just general cultural metaphysical sickness that's been going on in Western civilization for quite some time? Or is it like a sort of lack of will to confront like what's happening with younger people and why people feel so disenfranchised in like boomer truth world, you know? Because in the 1990s, like in the end of the 90s, when Dylan and Eric were doing their thing, that was a massive social transformation at the dawn of the internet age. And like, you know, then you see it again with Elliot Rodger. Like people go insane at these very transformative moments, because you could objectively say that like the world transformed in such a dramatic way after 2013. Like second term Obama was like the dawn of so many different social pathogens that we see. Not to say that that's a cause of like, obviously like Elliot Rodger and Dylan Eric were nut bars, and you know, but go ahead, Prue. What were you going to say about it? I'm just rambling.
No. I thought you were going somewhere with that. I thought you were taking yourself into a good direction. I mean, this is the reason
it's hyperstitional. We live in hyperstitional age.
Well, we do, but it's also like the number one reason why everyone and their mother tries to provide this anthropological starting point or a historical year zero for when shit changed. You know, like, oh, it's the age of Aquarius. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. And the reason why we do is because everyone is fundamentally aware on some level that everything did change. And it's very hard, I think, for a lot of people to kind of come to. I don't think there's one answer, because, or there's like one one variable, one thing that we can point to. And again, as much as I take some issues with Gerard, I think that he's right that we try and look for an answer / scapegoat on some of these things, because it's just like, it's the guns, it's the social media, it's the porn, it's the satanic panic, it's whatever. And at the end of the day, it's like, well, we've all retreated into private spaces in which are the last areas in which I can gatekeep or find like-minded people where I'm not going to be judged. I mean, like the meme about it's that old 4chan green text about like toaster fucking, right? Like you want to fuck a toaster, and it's just like, okay, well, in a normal society, you would be called stupid or mentally ill or worse, and you know, you'd be given a lobotomy or you'd be given pills, and then the problem is over because you can't find other toaster fuckers. But you're on the internet, and it's just like, oh boy, welcome to like the toaster fucking Discord, where like we promised not to touch the toaster, but you know, I'm still sexually attracted to it. And then
toaster attracted persons.
Yeah, you're a toaster attracted person, right? Like, you know, man. You like sourdough slices, and your toaster as your
favorite kid. Your favorite movie growing up as a kid was The Mightiest Toaster.
Yeah, The Brave Little Toaster was your sexual awakening or whatever.
Toaster. That, oh man, I watched that year. I remember I watched it when I was a little kid.
Same.
But when I watched it, like when I was an adult, I watched it with my mother. I cried, man. I'm not gonna lie, I cried. Like
I think you've said this on the air before.
I've said this, yeah, I cried, man.
I feel like we've had this discussion about The Brave Little Toaster before.
It's one of those things. Like, why would you expose a kid to this level of trauma? Like, it's just, you know. But no, Lugubrious in the chat says it the best. The answer is the fall of man. No, it's 100% true.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but also like when you really contemplate, who wrote that essay? Was it Wolf, or was it Gore Vidal, or was it some neocon that wrote The Paranoid Style of American Politics?
That feels like I'm just gonna go look it up. I feel like
it was Alan Bloom.
I think it's Alan Bloom.
Yeah.
No, Richard Hofstadter.
Oh, it was Richard Hofstadter.
Richard Hofstadter in 1964 in Harper's Magazine.
He was very instrumental in the creation of like what we see as like modern liberalism now. But like,
he was a new left public intellectual. Yes.
Yeah. But but Richard Hofstadter, when he talked about the paranoid style of American politics, because America, from its very foundation, was essentially created in conspiracy, obviously. But also, I think like the paranoid style is interesting. Okay, when you look at the Epstein thing, and you know, again, like, you know, I think people more or less know my position. I think we've said this on the show before. I think like the attempt to minimize it is sort of like not the right move.
It's a huge PR cock up to the highest degree.
Yeah, like I mean, I know that's like a very mercenary way of looking at it, but I would even go so far as to make a moral argument that that's not what you really want to do. I mean, but because I think this is leading to my point, is that when it comes to the paranoid style of American politics, you know, when you really contemplate the gravity of not just the Epstein thing, but what was going on in the British ruling class for many generations, with not just with Jimmy Savile, but really for hundreds of years.
I still can't get over that they made a Jimmy Savile reference at the fucking end of 28 years later.
I don't know if it was Jimmy Savile or if it was that family cult.
I'm pretty positive it's Jimmy Savile.
Yeah, it could be. No, yeah, because I mean, we all know that like, Danny Boyle has a particular thing when it comes to children. I mean, did you see that there were Britpopper leftists that were celebrating the opening Olympic ceremony that he directed? And they were like, oh, this is when Britain was really good. And it's like, ugh, you know, but anyways, when you talk about the paranoid stuff, you really do contemplate what Schwab is calling the sort of bungle space of perceptions with public events. I wouldn't say, but this is distracting me. I wouldn't say that affected. Listen, I'm going to give you 3 for the price of 1. Okay? I will review all 3 28 Days Later films for my usual movie review fee. So, I thought 20
But your point, Gio.
My point being is that the bungle space that is Jeffrey Epstein, if you truly were to contemplate the majority of the world leaders or people in power engaging in such incredibly destructive, immoral, and sick activities as a sort of ritualization of power itself, a sort of externalization of the hierarchy through depravity. And then you look at all the people that like a lot of parapolitics people talk about with that book, for example, Program to Kill, with like serial killers and all that.
Yeah, David McGowan's book.
David McGowan's book, yeah. When you really contemplate it, then you have to seriously consider that avenues of public information itself are fundamentally distorted in terms of what normal people think, feel, and believe as to what constitutes a sort of moral framework that is really, built civilization as we know it. And the fact that people that are in control of said civilization are at such a depraved state really throws you into a form of uncertainty and doubt as to what we think, feel, believe, and see in everyday life in terms of our access to information and what the messages that we're receiving, and even the things that we can perhaps claim to be sort of mutually conveyed or organic sources of information. Those two also have to be called into question. And I think that most people at the really lower level can't really think of those things. And so therefore it's preferable to just turn it into a meme. Epstein didn't sunset himself or whatever. And I think the gravity of it is obviously lost because it becomes, again, another source of discourse in this weird pop culture.
It just becomes a thought terminating cliche because, because I mean, again, it takes a lot to unpack a meme, right? Because when, for instance, does the average person know what like Kavitha Anand says? And this is such an easy example, right? But like, does everyone know what he says when he says the woke are more correct than the mainstream? Obviously, the woke don't. They don't get what he's saying.
Right.
And some right wingers don't even get what he's saying either.
Yeah.
And in the same way, when you say like trying to make sense or understand, say like Epstein or even like what goes on Twitter, because like the paranoid style of American politics, for what paranoid style that America still has, gets screwed on such a level of psychosecurity that like there are forces that you don't know that are messing with you in real time. And unless you're present in those forums, in those spaces, in those group chats, you are never going to know for sure, for certain, where a certain term originates from, right? Like, someone said this, and it's just like, okay, well, do I know that for sure? Or is that just what someone tells me? And like, it requires you to do the research and to do the homework. And I mean, that's good. We should be doing the homework. We should be doing the research, but we're not always going to know 100%. And that puts people, I think, into a very like schizophrenic style of politics where they start fetishizing or creating like this weird, like political paraphernalia or paraphilia, excuse me, where like they fetishize the unknown and they fetishize what could be their sense of truth or their sense of, like reality actually works this way. And this works on all sorts of things, whether it's talking about Epstein or Israel or, I don't know, like the who's on Peter Thiel's pay list or network or whatever. Like it's very, all that it does, at least in my point of view, is that it fundamentally leaves people wondering, well, what's actually true? And when they do that, right, like it all puts us in a weird spot where it's like, okay, now we're all paranoid schizophrenics. And our ability to hold on to anything that looks like baseline reality is fundamentally rejected because there is no baseline reality. You and I exist in two totally different bubbles that inform our a priori suppositions about how the world works and about who's aligned with who, and our network mapping and our own pattern noticing brains tells us that we're going to do so. And this is why, the thought terminating cliche or nothing ever happens or Epstein didn't kill himself, there are nice forms of auto amputation that reinforce a flow state that says, I believe in this and you're not changing my mind because this little statement reifies my belief system, and that's not going anywhere.
Yeah, well, there's a few points to be made. One of them is that it's almost like the real has become a work of fiction with a massive unreliable narrator.
Correct.
Like,
I agree.
Yeah.
For a good chunk of people, yes. And I would argue ourselves included.
Yeah, of course.
We're not reliable narrators anymore. Right. I don't know if there ever was. Well, there is. But I mean, outside of scripture and church traditions, like, yeah, I don't really think that there are any reliable narrators anymore, at least online.
Mm-hmm. And another point would be that the unique moral panic that's attached to Epstein to just be more nuanced is that there has always been an era where like elites have done very incredibly evil things. I mean, that's pretty obvious. I think that the difference being is that
child abusing elites has been a unfortunate part and parcel of the human condition of civilization.
Right. But I think the difference being is that the current elites sell you a moralistic narrative of the world in ways that the elites of the ancient regime simply didn't. And I mean, that's not true. There always was sort of a grander narrative to civilization, but in terms of our current era, it's not just the hypocrisy, but it's also like the fact that people can operate in a way that divorces power from its own face, if that makes sense, in terms of the sort of managerialism and technocracy that we operate in. It's like, you know, people don't really consider like modern elites to be the same as an emperor or a dictator or any sort of ancient regime figurehead or monarch. But so therefore it gives them enough cover of like this nebulous thing called the system or the managerial nature to technocratic post-war liberalism that operates in sort of like this hidden cloak or image of thought that is like this moral legitimacy after the war. That's like the other regimes were destroyed because we're so obviously so good. But it's like, when you actually look at that, that's bullshit. Like that's, you know, I mean, I know I'm being very cynical here, but the sort of moralistic narrative of our era and our regime and the sort of the world as a whole in terms of like, well, the Western world, in terms of who actually holds power. It's like, you know, I don't really think like a Caesar or a emperor even, or even a monarch would give you such a tall tale about their own moral legitimacy and how we sort of perfected this interaction of politics and nature. Because that's really what the End of History book is in a large part about in Fukuyama, is that
I would agree.
It's the intersection of like the perfection of human nature is also the perfection of our political system after the Cold War. What, you know, Condilis called planetary politics. And so this is why to us it's so shocking, because you're claiming to remove yourself from that whole gamut of history by perfecting this sort of technocratic managerial system that has sustained us for a few decades now. But at the same time, you're also doing something that is almost in a weird way return to the very ancient when it comes to specifically this Epstein-like activity. And so it doesn't really make sense to a lot of people. And it's completely blatant in your face with the most outrageous gaslighting. Exactly. Exactly. Whereas really like, you know, these people are still fundamentally of a particular type. And you could say like our elites are degenerated and they're not like the elites of the past, obviously, but there still is something there to be said. And I'm not even particularly making like this conspiracy theory libertarian point that was very popular in the 2000s where it's like all power is corrupt or whatever. But I'm just saying that our particular elites tend to be more corrupt because of their claim to a development within man and a development within human history and within the history of the world itself, which makes them even more unscrupulous and evil and maniacal, if that makes sense.
Well, also because like the patterns of control that we have available to us now, anyone is fundamentally compromised. Like the thing that I thought was most interesting, for instance, like when the Snowden leaks took place, was like there was the brief mention of sexual intelligence, and then no one talked about that. Out of all the things, which meant things ranging from browser history to you know, honeypots, but mainly a lot of it had to do with like a guy's porn habits. And now, of course, with the age of artificial intelligence and the ability to basically create cheese pizza out of thin air, like that's even more terrifying, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that now the age of, you know, as Schwab was referencing, like this, like compromising, mutually assured destruction. I think that, you know, now you can come up with any reason why people would do said things or create whatever, because now we have an excuse to create all kinds of terrifying kind of relations or systems of control that any person can come up with. But so what do you do to get ahead of the amateurs, right? Well, the way that you get ahead of the amateurs is that you just create a perpetual system of paranoia, of saying this or distraction and getting lost in a particular like memeplex. And I think Epstein does all that because at the end of the day, it really boils down to that probably Epstein was used by intelligence and was laundering money and helping, get that from point A to point B, and also did a lot to make sure that the worst people on earth and people that have no problem, trying to destroy the West, get to do what they want to do. And so it's like, all right, it probably does come down to a lot of those basic points. But because we've now created a greater mythology behind all of that, whatever truth that there may be on said issue gets buried for safe edginess, as Sex Freakman pointed out in chat, or worse. It's just like, great. So now the truth gets lost, and we then enter this parapolitical schizophrenia, and that's not going away anytime soon.
Yeah. No, but that's what I mean. Like, it does create like a huge apparatus of suspicion as to like world leaders and certain messages that they're pushing and so on and so forth. I mean, it is a basic point, but
and unless you're there, right? Like, unless you're there to participate or take part in that creation, right, of where those messages come from, like, you can't really trust anything that you say. And that's why I think, who was it, Leo Caceres, that put out a tweet the other day that was like, listen, if you like somebody, you will try and conform whatever they say to your worldview, so you feel good about yourself. And if you don't like someone, you're just going to hate them, despite the fact that they may say something that's agreeable.
Yeah, I've experienced that myself, obviously. Yeah.
I mean, we all have. I'm not immune to it, and I'm like, damn, like, I really agree with that, And I mean, like, Leo's a great writer anyway, and it helps that way. Whereas, like, you can read objectively good takes or prose, and you're just like, yep, okay, I'm learning something here. But it's hard to do that, I think, when we're all engaging in that same kind of space where you don't know where anything is, and then discourse kind of dies because all that you're doing is reifying the same strategies or the same cultural landmarks that are there. Like, there is this, as much as the stuck culture thing has turned into a meme, there is truth in the sense that, like, I live in a world where, like, the same sort of edgy talking points that, like, my predecessors on the right talked about are still being relitigated, 40, 50 years later. And that's that can be a very depressing or blackpilling thing to say. In the
even
same
stuff
way,
Potteritz was writing about in the 60s are still like relevant today, unfortunately.
Well, even shit that I mean, like, a really depressing example, like, just to talk about, like, the size of the government, which sounds so boomer coded, but it's really in reference to things like it's the word I'm looking for, like, just bureaucracy. Like, like, we have a militant base of voters that are not going to want to lose their cushy jobs or whatever. Like, that basic observation had been pointed out by Reagan on the Johnny Carson show in 1976, and had been pointed out by virtually every political scientist and their mother, or even people working inside government over, hundreds of decades and tens of centuries of American politicking, or not American, but like, just like Western politics writ large. And it's just like, okay, nothing has changed.
You know what created internet blood sports before the internet?
What?
Norman Mailer versus Gore Vidal on the Johnny Carson show. Was it Johnny Carson? Yeah.
No, I would argue it wasn't that. It would be
Gore Vidal.
William F. Buckley Jr. versus Gore Vidal.
Yeah.
You call me a crypto Nazi one more time, I will bash. Yeah, I will punch you in the goddamn face, or something. Is what William F. Buckley had said on live television, mind you.
Yeah.
And so Gore won basically because he got Buckley to shut out.
Same with Norman Mailer.
So
like,
true.
I mean, I think Norman Mailer, in terms of like reality, and Norman Mailer was spiritually true, but Gore Vidal made him look like a deranged maniac, and so Gore Vidal won the debate. So
many such cases.
Is Gio in Vancouver? God no. I'm on terrible next to the U.S. border. So he called Buckley an Austrian painter. Yeah,
he did. He called him a crypto Nazi on live TV. There's a whole documentary about this debate that you can watch that I think is really good.
Whether Buckley did more than probably any man in America to just basically put a boot through the throat of like an older organic right wing in America. And it's just like, Gorman L called him an Austrian painter fan. That's amazing. Yield rage baiting. Yeah, exactly.
It works. It works.
Even like Foucault versus Chomsky. That was a great one. Although it wasn't internet blood sports-ish, but winning the debate by low IQ leftist Dame that was like literally like.
But that was also the first of its kind on public TV.
Yeah, exactly.
And so like your pundit style of like talking heads shitting on each other comes from that. Since '68, hasn't gone away. Probably never will.
If you could go, Prude, before we move on to Burnout Society, if you could go to any era of history, what public intellectual would you debate?
What public intellectual would I debate?
Or any like philosopher or spiritual figure?
Oh man, that's a good question. I don't know. I'm not. Can I give me a minute to think about that? I don't have like one dead set in my mind.
Me neither.
Asks me a question. He doesn't have an answer already ready to go. Okay. Well, that's good to know. I don't know. That is a good question. I don't know who I specifically would debate. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. That's a good one. I don't know.
One of the founding fathers. Would you debate Hamilton?
Well, probably, because who wouldn't say no to that opportunity? But there's a lot about Hamilton that I agree with and a lot I disagree with. It's really funny. I actually just bought a book about Hamilton's semi-private debates with James Madison, and I'm really looking forward to reading it because these are debates that I'm not 100% familiar with. I'm more familiar with the ratification of the U.S. Constitution and the debates that took that because that was my senior paper. But I don't. I'm looking forward to it. So I guess I'd have to think about it. I don't know. I'd debate Hamilton, but I don't think he's like the big guy I should like debate because I feel like they're a bigger personality.
I mean, you can't give an obvious, like an obvious would be, I don't know, like Karl Marx or whatever. That's stupid. But like, I wouldn't pass that one down.
I mean, he's dead, or I don't know if he's dead or not, but I think he's pretty close to being dead. But like, be fun to debate Peter Singer.
Oh yeah, there you go.
That'd be a good one. I would actually, to be perfectly honest, just because I grew up in the early 2000s, I would have loved for the opportunity to debate Christopher Hitchens.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah,
I would
debate Bertrand Russell. I would debate Bertrand Russell. Yeah.
Another good one.
Yeah, David Hume. I don't know.
Hume is also not a bad one to debate.
That'd be a good one.
I don't know. It would have been fun to be debating any of these people in the 20s and 30s just for the sole basis of the sort of mathematics crisis that kind of emerges spiritually in the midst of the amount of quantum physics that gets shown to the public. That would have been interesting. I don't know. That's such a good question.
What internet personality would you like to debate the most?
What internet personality? None of them.
Yeah.
I can't think of a single, like, okay, Gio, you know this lore better than I do. Has there ever been a single like internet debate where you felt like it really did change the world or changed the scene?
Oh,
like if you could name one or two off the top of your head.
Okay. Spencer versus Sargon.
Yeah, that's fair.
Hitchens versus William Lane Craig. Because that was the only time Hitchens was actually genuinely stumped by William Lane Craig. Even though I don't agree with like his apologetics or whatever, but like, I want to say
that is a good debate.
Damn, I'm trying to think. Like, what's a monumental one? I would think like Destiny versus Norman Finkelstein, because I think Finkelstein really exposed Destiny for what he is, And ever since then, Destiny has just kept taking L after L. But I wouldn't say like that's really important. I would say, did Peterson versus Zizek really change anything? No, because it wasn't a debate. It was a conversation.
It was entertainment.
Dave Green versus Joel Berry? Fuck no. No way. Like,
that doesn't change anybody's opinion. No. And like Joel ain't gonna change.
No, he said such hideous things. No, but I would say Sargon versus Spencer, that was like the really big one that everyone was looking forward to. But I do think it's very funny how like both of them have sort of like switched up their positions in some ways. Like it's very, give it time, right? Destiny called Asmongold an Austrian painter essentially advocating for 1924 Immigration Act. A versus Aaron McIntyre. That wasn't a debate. That was a conversation.
The two were still friendly with each other.
Destiny versus Dontron. That one. Destiny versus Dontron. That was a good one. Let's see. I'm trying to think.
But I think this kind of comes and illustrates a certain point that like where or when do these matter? Like
no, it doesn't matter.
And I'm not saying that to be like a
theology debates. Fucking forget about it. Like that doesn't really.
Like there are theological debate. Like historically, there are theological debates. A lot of online apologetic stuff.
Yeah,
I try hard to avoid, and I say that not because I'm against people being evangelists. I'm not, but it's also that most of us online, especially in the English-speaking world, who do not read Greek and do not read Latin or Syriac or anything else, we kind of become very bad. I think we don't have the intellectual rigor for some of this stuff.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, a lot of those spaces can just be really fucking toxic, and I'm not here for it.
Dave Green versus Confidence.
You're here for if you're doing that, like you're here for Christ. You're not really here because you want the like 100K subscriber like button. And there are some people that put that like next to their crucifix or their icons, and I'm just like, no. At that point, that becomes idolatry, and that's not no, just flat out no.
Daddy Jim versus Ethan Ralph. I think that was for entertainment value. That was a good one. Also, the destruction of Monday Matt. That was a really good one as well. When they, he was flagging people.
The destruction of the Amazing Atheist.
The Amazing Atheist when he debated. Did he debate Venom Fang X back in the day? I know he debated Brett Keane once when Brett Keane claimed to be a Christian for a little bit.
Okay, so you want to go back in time, maybe 10 years ago. Who debated? This is the one time in God's green earth that you will ever see Dave Green on the same platform as Nick Fuentes. What debate were they arguing over about? Was it like the existence of God or like just defending traditional religion? It was like Dave and Nick versus two other guys. This is like happened? 8-9 years ago. Yeah, this happened. This was like a Google Hangout. This is how fucking old it is.
Dave versus ContraPoints. That was a good one.
Oh, see, but this is the thing. This is like, I don't remember anything about these that really stand out to me where I'm like, these are so fundamentally important that I need to remember them or talk about them,
The funniest one, although I wouldn't say this because he's a great writer, but he is like a Gen X edgelord that can't give up the act. The Luke Ford Show Destruction of Jim Goad. That was a very entertaining one. I have nothing against Jim Goad, by the way. I have nothing against Jim Goad. I enjoy some of his writings, but that stream in terms of like the funniness of it, like it wasn't a debate. It was just like basically a hit job. Like, let's be real. It was like Matt Forney, Baked Alaska, the Weekly Sweat Boys, and a bunch of other people, Luke Ford against Jim Goad. Defending what was her name, Sturzinger or whatever. That was pretty funny. That was pretty entertaining. I gotta admit, that was entertaining. What's the other ones people are mentioning? Oh yeah, Keith Woods and versus Logo and Haas. That was a funny one.
Keith and Joel versus that was a funny debate just because.
It was mostly just Haas and Keith talking, though, because I remember Logo, he was, like, smoking his Juul. He was, like, and would come up with a quip every time, like, that was a funny one. That was a funny one.
That's also been a meme that's died, has been using Logo as your scapegoat.
Yeah.
Which I'm kind of glad for, because I think the consequences of that are actually pretty damning.
Corey Miller debated Adam Green.
Yeah, he did on iHypocrite's channel about
Wow.
Christianity being like a Jewish plot or whatever.
I had a bit I did in a group chat once where imagine if we got like not current Bob Larson, but 1980s Bob Larson with the high voice. Can you imagine Corey Mailer going back in time going on Bob Larson's radio show? And so you claim that U.S. soldiers are burning in hell right now? And then Corey Mailer, yes, Bob. Yeah. If you don't know, that's a reference to this infamous debate that Bob Larson had with a certain figure who I will not mention. It was a pretty funny debate, though. It was a pretty funny debate. Just like Bob Larson. Although I will say, the Bob Larson versus Boyd Rice ones, total Kino content. 100% Kino. Look up Bob. They became friends after. Look up Bob Larson versus Boyd Rice. Those are incredible debates. Like, this is internet blood sports before it was even a thing. But yeah, Corey Mailer going on old school Bob Larson, that would be something, man. And listen, I endorse everything Corey Mailer says, obviously, but in terms of just pure content, like Bob Larson would just have an aneurysm. He'd be like, "You're claiming U.S. soldiers that fought in World War II are burning in hell?" Like, anyways, let's move on.
Yeah, I'm. I think everything that just asks about questions of debates, it's just. I can't think of one that I'm like, damn, that's really. And you know how I know that they're not really that important is because when I first started being the Prudentialist 5 freaking years ago, half a decade of my life has been spent doing this. I literally have a video that is on my YouTube Watch Later playlist, and you want to insert old Giga Chad here, modern day debates in which Dave is arguing for less democracy against some random liberal saying we should have more democracy. And I'll tell you what, never watched the video in full. It has been sitting with maybe 20 minutes watched on my Watch Later playlist for 4.5 years. I'm probably never going to finish that one. And
yeah,
okay. So why do I say all that? Because odds are like these debates really don't have that much of an impact because it's so easy to move from one thing to the next. I mean, I think a big chunk of why we're now talking about Russiagate so much is because I think Trump knows his goose is kind of cooked PR-wise when it comes to this Epstein stuff. And I mean, even, I I agree with Scott Greer, where he's like, a lot of this is really shitty PR, and that's why they're doing it, because they kind of need to, move on or find or return and give some red meat to the base. And the red meat that we can think of is going to be more and more Obama and proving our enemies are, everything that we're going to relitigate 2016, baby.
Yeah. They're shifting Epstein. The CIA director is shifting Epstein onto China and Russia, which I find hilarious. But
well, you got to make it about your enemies.
Yeah.
Not your other enemies, but your enemies.
Yeah, Gravantis. Honestly, a lot of internet debates are just to raise one's online profile. Random nobodies gain a following. Well, yeah, I mean,
yeah,
BTR was essentially that. It was Twitter on YouTube. That's what it was.
Oh, do you want to share a random piece of racist lore about yourself? Thanks, Gravantis. Very cool.
Gravantis got so much heat for that, and you could tell as a black woman, Gravantis was steaming at that.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
These black queens, they just suffer so much.
Yeah. We're joking. Gravantis is not a black. Well, that's just a joke.
Also, right? If you can literally go to his YouTube channel and you will see his very white face.
Does he still have a beard?
I don't know if he kept it or not. He had some stubble the last video I saw him do. So I don't know. I don't think about that shit. I'll wait till I get a new video in my notification that says
Sean versus Hunter Avallone. That was a funny one.
That's a name that's not relevant anymore. Oh my gosh, Hunter Avallone.
Especially after that shooting.
Oh yeah, with the ex,
the girlfriend, yeah.
The ex and the girlfriend, yeah. It's what a crazy thing to freaking think about. Yikes.
Then the messages.
We were all there on Twitter when it happened.
I should make fun. That's a tragedy, but like, I'm not gonna say what I believe about Hunter Avalo, but let's just.
I just find it interesting that it says something to me, at least, that like what becomes of you when you can flip on a dime like that ideologically?
Yeah,
like I think some of my politics have probably moved more to the right on some issues, maybe some to the left, but like it's usually with some careful consideration, or it's usually with like I had a pre-existing notion that maybe I read about or I've let take to its like logical conclusion. I could be wrong. I don't know. I'm just as much a victim of the things I write about as what I say, but it's it is interesting when someone can just go from like, I don't know, like right-wing troll baiter to, now I'm a liberal.
It was very low effort content both ways.
Well, yeah.
Like, very low effort, like reactionary clickbait. Then he like did leftist clickbait. It's just the guy has no inherent beliefs of his own. Like he has nothing.
I love clickbait. I love clickbait.
Yeah. I don't think Hunter Avalo believes in anything, really. That's,
Well, isn't that a scary thing to think about for a moment? That like how many people do these things and don't believe in anything? That's a crazy thing to consider. Because it's just like, oh, isn't this such a great argument? Isn't this such a great tool? Isn't this guy such a great leader? And then it's just like, sir, he believes in nothing. Sir, I question whether or not he possesses qualia. Like it's terrifying.
Oh, I'm not going to mention the Vouch thing. I'm not going to mention that. That's too.
That's another name I've not thought about in forever.
There's been some leaks, put it that way.
Oh, how unfortunate.
But
is he a big fan of that horse gotcha game?
I
feel like he would.
It's with real people now.
Oh,
it's even worse.
How's the glue going?
But that's what I mean. Like there was something. I think it was a follower of mine, Star Tiger, that said like it's very funny how Felix, PewDiePie, how he like said one word in anger 10 years ago, and he almost lost his career over it, and like JonTron almost like basically lost everything for debating Destiny and making like tepid alt-right talking points. But like genuine predators can just get away because they have an internet following on the political left. It's very funny how that works.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Who is the person that because I don't know. I only know about this person's existence because of Martin constantly trolling them. That strange mentally ill person who goes by like the Onion Head or whatever.
Whose co-host was outed for certain. Yeah.
I was just wondering if you were talking about the same person. And Vouch was the said character that got outed.
No, different person.
Oh, okay. Wow, another random leftist being a sexual predator
on the internet.
On the internet.
Wow.
Soliciting? No way.
Yeah.
This is news to me. First time.
People make fun of Will Stoncil, but like, no, it's not Will Stoncil. I think Will Stoncil's like probably the least likely. I mean, I would
argue that he's probably the most psychologically resilient person that they have.
I don't think like I know.
And there's my hot take. There's my hot take, and the reason why I genuinely believe that is that he hasn't. I mean, like, yes, he's gone insane, but he hasn't gone insane to the degree wherein he's offed himself, trooned out, or done anything yet. If anything, he still has enough T levels to be just like, actually, I'm going to stand here and fight out of spite because I think you're evil. And I'm like, oh, well, that's actually far more refreshing than some of the other
ones.
Other ones, yeah.
I mean, I know that male feminists don't have a good track record, but I can't see Will Stoncil like harming anybody really. I mean, I know he like posts a lot of sadistic bullshit and he like talks about, but like in terms of like him actually physically harming like a woman or something, like I just don't see that in him. I would never want to like.
Also, I think he's cognitively aware that if anything like that were to happen, his life is genuinely over.
I think if I got to know Will Stoncil in real life, he'd actually be a genuinely like somewhat decent guy. I don't know. Maybe I'm just too forgiving, but like he doesn't strike me.
He'd probably try and kill you.
But would he though?
I think he'd try.
I don't know, man. I think he's doing a performative bit.
Probably.
I think if I knew him in real life, I think he probably wouldn't like me, but that'll be a guy I think I'd be comfortable debating without him
I'd be like,
trying
hey,
to
Will, do you
stab
want
me
to
or
talk?
something. I don't know, man. I think
I almost want to do it, but I have made a rule not to really engage in blood sports.
No,
I have done one online debate in my entire career in the sense of a formalized debate structure, and it was on Apostolic Majesty's channel when he and I had the same number of subscribers. Of course, he has a much bigger following than I do because he's a history educator channel and stuff like that. But it just goes to show different kind of content, and that's okay with me. But
the man, I'm not gonna lie, the man has endured a lot. Will Stancil,
I think he has endured. Yeah, I think that his politics are despicable, but
of course,
I can say at least with some degree of objectivity, I think other lesser leftists would have crumbled under the pressure and probably either redacted themselves or just quit.
Most leftists have not received a tenth of the punishment that Will Stancil has online. And the fact that he's still up there tweeting every day about we're evil and blah, 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 and we're going to get you. And but in real life, though, I mean, when you actually do interact with somebody in real life, it is disarming in the regard.
Oh, no, that's very true. A lot of people who I thought I was going, maybe I had petty disagreements with online. Turns out, no, once you meet them IRL, it's actually they're pretty chill and it's okay.
Does Will Stancil have any hobbies or anything he's interested in besides politics?
Yeah, what do you like?
Yeah.
What are you into?
You think you saw the latest Star Wars movie?
He
had to.
He had to.
Yeah.
You think he's got an opinion on Andor? Probably. Probably.
You think Will Stancil was really into Baby Yoda?
Who knows? I don't want to. Heaven forbid that we become the target of his ire. You're welcome.
Listen, I'm not bashing him. I think he's I'm not going to say he's.
I just got questions.
He posts a lot of very despicable things. He believes in a lot of despicable things, but I view Will Stancil as more of a human being worthy of respect than a lot of people on his side of the online world. Put it that way. I don't know. Will Stancil, it's just something about him. I don't know. Something about him. Just, I can't get mad at him.
It raises some interesting questions.
Yeah.
That's really all I can say on that point. Raises some interesting questions. Yeah. Do you want to get to the book?
Yeah. Bill Wilson forgot about the stream war. Evan loves war. No, that's another one I have no respect for.
Oh, same. True.
Yeah.
It's a disaster in that regard. It is its own mess. But yeah, we'll carry on. We'll move on. Let's off to the there's no dignity to the enemy. I would agree more so with that than I would anything else. But I'll leave.
Will looks like a lesbian.
That is true. He does.
He kind of looks like that one, if you watch episode 6 of Extreme Peace.
No, I haven't.
The female comedians. Yeah, he looks like that one school guidance counselor in that one skit. I don't know.
Remember, Wile E. Coyote has now mailed a SIG P320 into the road.
That was incredible. Just the minor touch on the barrel and it goes off. What the fuck was that?
Yeah, it's terrifying. All right, let me go
I thought SIG was one of the better companies.
Yeah, you would hope so. Let me go. Can I?
I think Glock gets too much hate.
Here. All right, cool. Share on screen.
Where do we leave off?
I don't know where we left off.
We left off.
You tell me where, and I'll bring it up.
I think page 47.
47. So
Yeah.
Can I make this any bigger?
Oh boy.
No, not really. Oh no. Full screen layout. Can I do that? No, that didn't really help either. That's unfortunate. So instead, what I will do is, hold on. I will share your screen. What?
Gio feels paternal mercy towards Will Stonsel because he reminds him of a lesbian actress he saw in one of his Tubi films, Groiper.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's probably true. Probably true. Oh man.
Incomprehensible. SIG 320 or Mideast pager. Call it.
That's terrible.
Either way, your legs and crotch are getting shot off. I can't help you with that way. It's kind of over in that respect.
But the guy, the gun tuber, like soy facing when he does it, that was hilarious.
Well, because he was just like, "Hey, man, like this is like the 5th discharge in a row."
This is like what law enforcement across the country uses, and it's like,
Well, it's also won a contract with the United States military, which is even
more
that too, terrifying.
Yeah.
Read the last paragraph that we were on.
The late modern achievement subject is subject to no one. In fact, it's no longer a subject in the etymological sense. It's positivized itself indeed. Yeah. Page 56.
Page 56. Okay, no longer. Let's see. Oh, we were almost done with the damn thing then.
Mm-hmm.
I'm almost there. Hold on. No longer. One more time. Say that again. Oh, subject in ontological sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. Let me go share screen, and then we can carry on. Burnout Society share. All right. Cool. We should be good to go. All right. Let me go zoom in. Bam, 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 bam. Ooh,
there you go.
That's bright as can be on my end. So yeah, the late modern achievement subject is subject to no one. In fact, it is no longer subject in the etymological sense. Subject. It positivizes itself. Indeed, it liberates itself into a project. However, the change from subject to project does not make power or violence disappear. Auto-compulsion, which presents itself as freedom, takes the place of allo-compulsion. This development closely connected to the capitalist relations of production. Starting at a certain level of production, auto-exploitation is significantly more efficient and brings in much greater returns than allo-exploitation because of the feeling of freedom it attends to it. Achievement society is the society of self-exploitation. The achievement subject exploits itself until it burns out. In the process, it develops auto-aggression that often enough escalates into violence of self-destruction. The project turns out to be a projectile that the achievement subject is aiming at itself. That feels allegorical to a lot of like big YouTubers. The burnout is real. Everyone is now our desire to create things is then effectively become gamified and monetizable enough that maybe, just maybe, we can make it. If I just finish this video essay, if I just finish this, if I just add another essay on the pile of hundreds of essays about how Dark Souls changed my life, then somehow I'll be the one that gets heard, and my essay will be the one that gets 150 million views or whatever. And then people they quit, or people leave spaces or fandoms or whatever because they realize, oh, I'm not doing this for anyone anymore, and all that I've done is emptied myself.
But that's a running theme throughout a lot of Byung-Chul Han's work.
Oh yeah,
is the sort of like which he's getting from Eric Fromm, which is that we are condemned to our own freedom. Which I mean, Fromm got that from Sartre, but like, you know, I think he's one of the few thinkers to have seriously thought about what it means to live in a sort of desubjectivized society and where you have this like sort of weird task of creating your own self in the absence via negativa of all pervasive superstructures that have sustained you, because even biopower itself still provides you like a narrative of life. But here, like, it's sort of like what we were talking about at the beginning of the show about like the economic realities creating people that snap. It's sort of like when you're crushed under the weight of your own responsibility of living outside of even those very somewhat sacred and duties and performative elements of what society once was, even though it was quote unquote oppressive from the outside, where you belong to a certain guild, you belong to a certain caste. Those things itself did provide the vast majority of people with a comfort within their own subjugation, if that makes sense. Whereas now we're in a very inwardly psychically driven quest to create one's own self without any guide rails. And it's very most people are not equipped for that. And the problem with Byung-Chul Han is he never seems to get around to solutions, because he still is a fan of things like modern liberal democracy. And I think like his critique, if there is a valid critique of Byung-Chul Han, is that by definition, his works, kind of like George Grant, his works are a lament. And it's not very easy, given the premises that he set up in his social analysis of current society. It's not very easy to find your way out of this unless you're willing to, like, I don't know, go towards some kind of intentional community or forego a lot of the things that have become the sort of mainstay of living in the information age, and the way that you have this perception about creating your own self, unless you're willing to forego it for a higher purpose, whether it's joining some kind of new religious movement or investing in the few areas of life that do provide you with a higher cause, like being a doctor or giving your life to the military or something of that nature. It's very hard to sort of wrap your head around, how do we get out of this? And I think maybe, in the same tradition as Michel Foucault, for instance, to ask that question is almost beyond the point. It's why I critiqued, when I was reading it in grad school, I critiqued so viciously the Charles Taylor essay on Michel Foucault about, like, how do we get out of power? Well, that's not the point. It's like, how do you stop breathing and still live without air? It's a very difficult thing. You can only alleviate the sort of machinations of power by rearranging it. But what Byung-Chul Han is giving you is like, okay, how do you rearrange this modern condition? How do you use this exploitation of the self towards ends that can mimic or approximate, for lack of a better term, meaning in life that societies of our past once gave us? And that's a very, very tall order for a lot of people.
Yeah, it certainly is.
How can Let's Players stop Let's Playing?
That's very true. In the view of the ego ideal, the real ego appears as a loser buried in self-reproach. The ego wages war with itself. The society of positivity, which thinks itself free of all foreign constraints, becomes entangled in destructive self-constraints. Psychic maladies such as burnout and depression, the exemplary maladies of the 21st century, all display autoaggressive traits. Exogenous violence is replaced by self-generated violence, which is more fatal than its counterpart inasmuch as the victim of such violence considers itself free.
Who does that remind you of, Prude?
The anime girl waving at me on the other side of the noose. That's exactly.
Well, that's true.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself. But like, that was the first thing I was thinking about, was that, like, the burnout and the depression is the 21st century malady is suicide.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I can't think of any other example.
There were.
Well, I mean, I can, but I mean, like, I think it's the most obvious.
Well, in history, there was, Emile Durkheim had this great essay on suicide, on sunsetting, and in history, there were acts of mass sunsetting that preceded great loss and tragedy. But it seems like, as an individualized condition, Emile Durkheim more or less hit the nail on the head with his concept of ennui. And of course, that is a huge influence on what Byung-Chul Han is writing about here. But no, I was going to say, like, that paragraph, does it not remind you of a certain 20th century Orthodox thinker?
You're referring to Seraphim Rose?
Seraphim Rose, yeah. Yeah, he would say almost exactly the same thing in Nihilism, which I found, when I read it, I think I even wrote a note, it reminds me of Nihilism by Seraphim Rose. Because he ultimately, a lot of the maladies and sort of corruptions of spirituality that Seraphim Rose was talking about does rely on a sort of form of self-inflicted violence upon the soul that the modern condition of nihilism delivers onto people, and that you in turn invest in by trying to find sort of pseudo activities to sort of buy into or assuage it. And I think like that, you know, even though Byung-Chul Han is framing this within the history of Western thought, and Seraphim Rose is framing that in terms of Orthodox Christianity, they do oddly enough arrive at very similar analysis. So,
well, the conclusion that both thinkers and that both men come to is I think, a very straightforward position that all attempts to search for liberation inevitably lead you dead in the ditch somewhere, because you're not going to find what you're looking for. In his very famous lecture, Father Seraphim Rose, in God's Revelation of the Human Heart, he writes that the world is littered with ideologies and people trying to liberate themselves either with drugs or free love or whatever.
Literally Kuming, yeah.
Well, yeah, but they're all, and it's filled with the rotting corpses of those that have tried it before.
Yeah.
And that Christ is the only exit from this world, which is, to me, still the truth, and will remain so. But I mean, for what Byung here is pointing out, which, you know, very similar to Seraphim Rose, is that people want freedom. They want to seek freedom from the foreign constraints or metaphysical or impassable restraints of the world. And those restraints are going to encompass everything from I don't make enough money to I don't get girls to whatever. Or and some liberals would say like, oh, it's just like too many immigrants or whatever, right? Like there are so many things out there that we would claim, well, this isn't working for me, so I have to do something about it. And if I create, or if I'm heard, or if I'm seen, then somehow in some way I'm going to make it, and I will be seen as like this hero or savior or whatever. And we know every time that people try this, there is that, like, as he writes here, like there is the burnout and the depression.
Mm-hmm.
And what follows from that is quite straightforward. People will think that they're free to do whatever they want. And that means, like, you know, there can be everything from another YouTuber being a predator to guys who ought in themselves because of their own conditions or their own demons that they fail to succeed. I think a good example of that would be the late Michigan Challenge runner Mitten Squad, who did take his own life, which is unfortunate. But I mean, it's just it's par for the course in this day and age that we have our own battles to fight. People look for freedom. And when you're engaging in an activity that constantly forces you to create, at a certain point, people just stop. And that's why I think
Chester Bennington.
Well, yeah, and I think that meme slash, well, it's not really a meme, but people turn it into a meme, that most men live quiet lives of desperation. Yeah, they do. And why is that? Well, we know the answer to that. The constraints, both mental, spiritual, physical, very real ones. Why bother? What's the point? What are we doing here? Yada yada.
No purpose to what I am.
No purpose. So what are we doing here? You know, like what are we actually doing? And so people quit. Yeah. People burn out.
That's what I mean. Chester Bennington, he really said it in Somewhere I Belong. Like that song was like so inspirational for us, like Sarlenial Chuds, for a reason, because it was like a very sincere and I said this in my podcast, I was relating new metal to professional wrestling at the time. Like it was a very sincere, very earnest, very like kind of simple but straightforward, like lack of the sort of irony poisoning that came about in the 2010s. A very like straight up lack of that translated into something as a sincere desire to find one's place in the world, especially as the vast majority of Linkin Park's, you know, young male audience at the time. But, you know, I mean, of course, like even young women.
Let he who did not, you know, mope listening to any Linkin Park song cast the first stone.
Yeah. Listening to Faint. Anyways.
So true.
Yeah. So here he gives a very powerful critique of Giorgio Agamben, but I think like Agamben really, I think he really is the philosopher of the 2020s, though, along with Byung-Chul Han for obvious reasons. Well, at least the first half of the 2020s. But if you want me to read this one,
I can carry on if you want me to.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Homo sacer originally meant someone excluded from society because of a trespass. One may kill him without suffering punishment. The sovereign disposes of absolute power to suspend the standing legal order. He embodies the legislative power that stands outside of the legal order, yet maintains a relation with it. Thus, the sovereign does not need to determine rights. The state of exception, by suspending the legal order, produces a lawless space where it is possible for any and every individual to be seized absolutely. Sovereignty's originary achievement is to have produced the bare life. This life is bare because it stands outside the legal order and therefore can be destroyed at any time. According to Agamben, human life becomes political only when it is incorporated into the power of sovereignty. That is, when it experiences unconditional subjection to a power of death. Bare, expendable life, and the power of sovereignty generate each other. Contrary to our modern habit of representing the political realm in terms of citizens' rights, free will, and social contracts from the point of view of sovereignty, only bare life is authentically political.
And he gets that from Schmidt, of course.
Yes. Life exposed to death is the originary political element, the phenomenon of politics. Is the injunction, bond, that produces the bare life, homo sacer. Sovereignty and the bare life of homo sacer or sacer occupy the two endpoints of the same spectrum. For the sovereign, all human beings are potentially hominis sacri. Agamben's theory of bare life holds to the scheme of negativity. Accordingly, perpetrators and victims, sovereign and homo sacer, are clearly distinguished, and topologically too. Sovereignty and the bare life, Agamben writes, stand at two extreme limits of the same order. Agamben's state of exception is a state of negativity. In contrast, the hominis sacri of the achievement of society inhabit a totalized state of normality. This is a state of positivity. Agamben utterly fails to notice the topological change of power that lies at the basis of the society of sovereignty's transformation into achievement society. From a standpoint at the middle of the society of achievement, Agamben describes the society as sovereignty. Therein lies the anachronism of his thinking. The dynamic that he traces is burdened by his anachronistic focus on negativity based entirely on exclusion and inhibition. Accordingly, he cannot grasp the violence of positivity, which is expressing itself as exhaustion and inclusion that characterize the society of achievement. Because Agamben devotes his attention exclusively to secularized forms of negativity that seem more archaic than ever, extreme phenomenon of positivity escape him. Today, violence issues more readily from the conformism of consensus than from the antagonism of dissent. In this sense, contra Habermas, one might speak of the violence of consensus.
Yeah.
Exclusion and exhaustion and inclusion are the violence of positivity. And what is the exhaustion and inclusion that we deal with today? Because we are an achievement society. What's the achievement that we deal with? At least in my view, looking at, say, the British government, or even here in America with sort of diversity, equity, and inclusion, it is a totalized state of normality. And for liberals, normality means no whites. It means a society in which dissent is not so much the problem, but as in you have to conform. And if you don't conform to the latest trend, then you yourself are worse than the dissenters.
Well, even in the art world, as I point out in my forthcoming book, I mean, it's really the oppression of inclusion, really, if that makes sense. It's, representation becomes a metaphysical category for people, and the lack of representation is sort of a deep mortal wound that must be filled. And so, but what I would say, though, is that Byung-Chul Han wrote this in 2015. And at the time, you could look at Agamben's middle period of work and you could say, well, that is correct. But I will say in Agamben's blog post during the clowndemic, I think he redeems himself in the sense that he recognizes that this is essentially was the model of power that the Homo sacer was going towards, that people are actually intuiting the law of bare life that they give to themselves during those years in the early 2020s. That actually it is a form of, it's like a performative ritual of bare life itself. But not one, I mean, yes, it was imposed from the outside, but just as much as people imposed it from the outside, it was imposed on the outside through the very dubious channels of state-sponsored information exchange and mandates that would change up and directions that would be confusing and contradictory from one day to the next. In that sort of like informational chaos, people ended up exploiting themselves ultimately. People exploited one another as well, or the demand to exploit oneself was placed. This is what's so different with ClownVid, is that, should I just say it for you?
Yeah.
This is what was so different about the COVIDian era, is that as much as it was a mandate like all public health emergencies that came to you from the outside that sustained Agamben's previous work in the 1990s and the early 2000s, what was so different about it was that it had this element of auto-exploitation as well, that you did this as a moral mandate, a moral panic, rather than just merely an element of public health. In a time when people didn't know really what was happening, or researchers themselves didn't even know what was happening. So therefore, there was this blanket moralization that translated into the achievement of how can I become a better person maximally. And there's still people, go to Twitter, go to Facebook, there's still people that are in this cult-like behavior of self-achievement and actualization that really is just an oppression of oneself. There's still people that exchange what's the best mask, how's the best way to avoid public life for me and my children. It's sick. It's just, I mean, I'm saying this as Canadian, that's why I find it so sick and repulsive. But there are people that still exploit themselves because they're like, don't you know that it's still happening, and so on and so forth. And it really goes to show that it goes well beyond just the sort of bare life mandate of, you're confronted. And Agamben talks about this in his blog post at the time, that you can buy in the book that I believe is a foreword by Christopher Caldwell, where he's like, yeah, it's true that, you're told to follow these rules and so on and so forth. But a lot of the times people followed them because they forced themselves to follow them in such a very stark and moralistic way that they were proud of it and they loved it. And there are still people, I'll never forget. There was this one journalist, his name was Solomon something, where he's like, I miss that time because it all felt like we were engaged in a moral project together. And that's why I miss the early 2020s. And I'm like, oh my God. I was the only one of few people to do the screen cap because he deleted this whole thread on it. I believe even deleted
I'm sure he did.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, like think about that. People are nostalgic for this like moralization over biosecurity, over bare life. And when Agamben said when people are confronted bold-faced with death every single day, allegedly, that's when we deny it the most. When we deny funeral services, when we deny public rituals, when we deny the prospect for ourselves, instead of handling it like, previous more religious-based societies that had very nuanced rituals and understandings about the nature of death en masse, because a lot of them lived through objective horrors and cruelties of famine, war, plagues. It's like, no, but us, we deny it. We even deny the face of death by no longer engaging in things like public funerals. And it's like that, I think, is so take this work as a product of 2015 Giorgio Agamben, not 2020 Giorgio Agamben. So
well, the other thing too that Byung points out that I think is kind of important is that he says contra Agamben with regards to like that we don't, that he's pointing out 2015 Agamben is looking at things far more secularly. And I think Byung is right. I think both by the nature of his Catholicism, but also by, what he writes about in The Disappearance of Rituals and in other essays. Like, we do live in a religious society. You may not like it. You may not like what the religion is, which seems to be some sort of like chiliasm with racial, like ethnocide that's like self-inflicted in a lot of ways. But it's also
I just call it transnational progressivism.
Yeah, like the altar of transnational progressivism, the altar of gay race communism, whatever you want to call it. Like there's a million different names for it. But like we do live in a religious society, and I mean like the normie has a liturgical calendar. the people have sacraments and rituals that they do. They may not call them that because they have a warped view of religion or what it means to have a spiritual life. But like, they're still aware that these things have power. Like, yeah, like they're still magic. That's still very real. That exists. That's not going anywhere. You can use it. People post on Reddit and Twitter all the time.
There was a tweet by Evan Loves Wharf that said Hulk Hogan's burning in hell, a hell he doesn't believe in.
A hell that he doesn't believe in.
Yeah. And Hulk Hogan's in heaven along with Ozzy and Macho Man, the Heart Foundation, the guys that died in the Heart Foundation, like Dynamite Kid, British Bulldog, Jim Neidhart. He's up there with Roddy Piper. He's up there with the Iron Sheik. I can't think of a wrestler that really deserves to go to hell. I don't know. Maybe like, I shouldn't say that. There was a lot of wrestlers who were engaged in very sus activity. Like, I know Pat Patterson's probably burning in hell for exploiting those young boys, but I can't think of anyone. I don't know.
Well, thankfully, you and I are not the fearful judge, that we don't have to concern ourselves with these things.
I truly think that Macho Man Randy Savage is in heaven right now. That brings me a lot of comfort. Yeah. Anyways, let's move on. Someone should clip that. Someone should clip. That's a Gio-worthy clip right there. Where are we at? 219:30. Macho Man Savage is in heaven. So yeah.
So there you go. I'll keep it on. The achievement subject stands free from external instances of domination, forcing it to work and exploiting it. It is subject to no one, if not to itself. However, the absence of external domination does not abolish the structure of compulsion. It makes freedom and compulsion coincide. The achievement subject gives itself over to freestanding compulsion in order to maximize performance. In this way, it exploits itself. Auto-exploitation is more efficient than allo-exploitation because of a deceptive feeling of freedom accompanies it. The exploiter is simultaneously the exploited. Exploitation now occurs without domination. That is what makes self-exploitation so efficient. The capitalist system is switching from allo-exploitation to auto-exploitation in order to accelerate. On the basis of the paradoxical freedom it holds, the achievement subject is simultaneously perpetrator and victim, master and slave. Freedom and violence now coincide. The achievement subject understands itself as its own master, is homo liber. Turns out to be homo sacer. The sovereign of achievement society is simultaneously his own homo sacer or sacer. By this paradoxical logic, sovereign and homo sacer still generate each other in the achievement society.
Well, that's a massive overturning of the Hegelian, the original Hegelian project of self and other, right? That's like we've gone to the point where absolute consciousness has perfected itself to where we exploit ourselves and we become our own master and slave. I forgot to mention Chris Benoit. Chris Benoit is obviously in hell right now. But anyways, no, but go up before that paragraph where he says about the violence of consensus. I mean, this was written in the 2010s, but I like to think that Byung-Chul Han probably had enough cultural literacy to understand what was going on around him in 2015. And like, we're still like living in it, the violence of consent. Although I would say that consensus thinking has fundamentally been disrupted for a variety of reasons in the 2020s, not just because of like the resurgence of Trumpism, but a number of other events. And I think that there still is a sense, at least on the sort of like object level in terms of institutions, especially outside of America, where the violence of consensus is a mainstay. And even though you could say that that's been a phenomenon throughout history, I mean, it was even, let's be real, it was a phenomenon even in medieval Christendom. The character of this consensus is much different in secularized, globalized, liberal, democratic, technocratic society, quote unquote, democratic. That sort of violence of consensus is much different in the way that an all-pervasive meta-narrative or moral system imposed on a society is something quite different than what we have now. In a lot of ways, the consensus that we live through is auto-generated. It has experienced a lot of hits, but it operates differently on the level of the self, which makes it even more pernicious. than something like, the Islamic Arab world or medieval Christendom or Tibetan Buddhist theocracy. It's something quite different in a way. It doesn't operate with the same maxims as we do. So if you have anything to say about that, Prudhoe.
No, I agree with you. And also that because we live in a society that is still in the echoes, at least in the West, right? There's still the echo of Christendom as the organizing political theology of the West. While that is mostly gone in most places, it still echoes. And so the things about it that had consensus to it, they still play a role. They've just swapped out Christ for a different deity or a different altar. And, in this age of idolatry that we live in, it becomes really easy for, to reference like the book of Daniel. Like, it's very easy to throw the holy youths into the fire because they don't conform. Or they weren't conforming the way that you're supposed to conform as of 5 minutes ago per the king's decree, right? And so like it becomes this super easy thing in which in today's society it's like, well, you didn't do this, and it's like, well, I'm so sorry. Like you had some big account not too long ago apologize, made an apology video, which is the first one I've seen in a really long time go like kind of viral. Apologizing because he's like, well, he was thanking people for educating him about how evil Hulk Hogan was or whatever.
Oh my god, who was it?
I'll find it, or someone in chat can tell you. But like,
there was a Chelsea Green wrestler who deleted her tweet and apologized for like, for condolences for the family of Hulk Hogan. Like, just fucking bullshit. Like,
what like, the also just kind of goes to show you that like, there are like the liberal or the centrist or whatever, like, oh, I wish we could go back, and it's like you can't go back to that world.
Yeah. Even like a raging libtard like Jim Cornette had a very nuanced take on Hulk Hogan. Like, like even fucking Jim Cornette could like slot his hatred, his seething, burning boomer lib hatred of Donald Trump for 5 minutes, rather for an hour, to do a podcast on the legacy of Hulk Hogan and Hulkamania. Like, even fucking Devon Dudley came out and he's like, Hulk Hogan, I know he said racist stuff, but he saved my career. I love that man. Rest in peace, man. It's like, I'm sorry, who am I going to fucking, like, some random wrestling podcaster or Devon Dudley? Whose opinion do I respect more? Whose opinion am I going to respect more about pro wrestling? Fucking Dave Meltzer or Devon Dudley or Jim Cornette or Mike Tyson, who came out with a good message, or all the litany of wrestlers, even guys who were only there for a short time, like Maven, who had a great video on Hulk Hogan. Who am I going to respect more? Them or some fucking blood-sucking journalist who never stepped a second in the ring in his entire life? It's like, oh, Hulk Hogan didn't save the wrestling industry. He just saved the WWE. It's like, no, some fucking match in Cork and Hall in the mid-90s saved wrestling, not Hulkamania. Okay, fuck you, Dave Meltzer. Fuck you. I'm sorry, Prude. Sorry. Had to say that. I'm sorry, but he said that. He said, Hulk Hogan didn't save wrestling. Like, fuck. Okay, you could, like, say that, like, listen, I don't like Hulk Hogan's racism. I don't like Hulk Hogan supporting Trump. But, like, come on, credit where it's due. If there was no Hulk Hogan, there was no Rock, there was no Austin 316, there was no John Cena, there was no nothing, okay? I'm sorry. It's just, it's a fact.
It's over.
It's over. Dave Meltzer destroyed his credit. Even fucking Jim Cornette, who goes on every single day and tweets about how Trump's a rapist and all this stuff, even he could slot his hatred of the Hulkster for one segment to talk about the greatness of his legacy. That really pissed me off. But you know what? Dave Meltzer, he could go and praise his indie smarks. It's like, anyways, I'm sorry, Prude. I totally derailed this, but I felt I had to say that because let's move on. I'm sorry. It's just, yeah.
You're fine, man.
I saw that.
No one is going to give you shit for this. Like, wrestling is an important thing to you. Like, say what you need to say.
But the thing is, though, is that, like, even, like, wrestlers who themselves are African-American said, I don't agree with what he said, but Hulk, I was a little kid, like tens, hundreds of millions of little kids in the 80s and 90s that grew up watching, in the 2000s, watching Hulk Hogan. Millions. And he's like, you know what? I was a little Hulkamaniac too. And so it's like, did he say racist things and he apologized for? Yeah, it's fine, you know? But it's not good enough for Dave Meltzer, because then, maybe I might offend someone in AEW. It's like, fuck off. You know, like, yeah. It's just, dissident rights Don Cherry. I wish I was the dissident rights Don Cherry. You know, Prude, get the table. I kind of would be like Bubba Ray. You know, apparently Bubba Ray, they're gonna face the Hardy Boys for one last time. But anyways, let's move on. But that's the point of auto exploitation. The fact that Chelsea Green had to delete like an objective tweet saying like I sympathize with Hulk Hogan's family for their loss, that she had to delete it, but like guys who have been in the industry for multiple generations are totally fearless. There's something wrong there. Like, it's, you know, like, even, like I say, even Jim Cornette. Jim Cornette is like the most deranged boomer libtard ever. And he still loved the Hulkster, you know? Like, it's just, man, you know? Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, like, that's the thing, right? Is that what is auto exploitation other than taking advantage of compulsive narcissism?
Exactly. Yeah.
Because all that the system does, like, if you know, you can talk shit about. I mean, there are people that I do know that would like happily talk shit about the concept of humility, but like, I mean, holy shit, I would much rather someone at least fake humility than some of the like just narcissistic shit I see day in and day out, where they really think that their shit doesn't stink. Like, I'm sorry, like I would probably respect some of these, you know, maybe more liberal pundits if they were like and had an ounce of humility, but liberalism has no humility with these people. But like, it's frustrating because at the end of the day, like we are in a system where like your petty grievances and narcissism are deliberately fucked with algorithmically, to where if you see something that you like or that you don't like, it will be weaponized against you. And like it'll want you to create another video, or even now with like modern matchmaking systems, where like the things that you're seeing out of a lot of free-to-play multiplayer games, whether it's Marvel Rivals or others, is that like they deliberately try and calculate how many games you've lost.
They do that now?
They do, and then they'll put you with teams that suck, and they'll game it so they can see how long they can keep you on edge. So when it's like, oh man, I've lost 3 games in a row, this fucking sucks, I want to quit, they'll put you with a team that's like skill wise better, and so they'll game it so you stay on longer. They're like, oh, we'll give you a big win, and like you're gonna feel so good, you're gonna feel like such a champion that you'll stay on a little bit. Maybe you'll spend, since you feel so good, maybe you'll buy a skin or something. Yeah, and like that's how things are going. It's not like the matchmaking of, you know, Halo 3 or whatever. Like that ship has sailed, buddy.
There's no objectivity in that. Like, how can you?
No, there isn't. Like, I mean, like if you're good enough of a player, like yeah, you can kind of game the system and beat it and come out on top. But even then, right? Like that's really hard to do. Yeah, because it is rigged against you.
Yeah, but the thing is, these people are never consistent with their own principles either. Like, one last wrestling example, there was this very popular wrestling video YouTube channel called WrestleLamia, and I believe they used to run shows where they had this AI. First of all, the AI generation stuff is terrible, but they had an AI generated Mount Rushmore of wrestling, and on there was Stone Cold, Rock, Undertaker, and they're like, who's the 4th one? And everyone's like, wow, the 4th one's Hulk Hogan. And they're like, we don't allow racists on our Mount Rushmore of wrestling. You know what the first reply they got on that tweet was, on that reply? Well, not just that, but was the mugshot of Stone Cold Steve Austin when he beat his wife, Deborah. And listen, I love Stone Cold. I grew up watching Stone Cold. But if you're going to like create one moral standard, you're saying that racism is worse than that? Like,
well, if you're a progressive, yes.
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, well, cheese pizza's worse. Racism is worse than cheese pizza, as they've readily admitted many times. So no, it's ridiculous, right? Like that video game system. Like, it's very funny because
I think Jeffrey Epstein would have gotten in more trouble in 2020's America had he been a racist rather than like a trafficking intelligence asset pedophile.
Like, I think if he was only like, yeah, like because he was pretty bipartisan.
If we ever got Epstein saying the N-word, we would have nailed his ass a lot sooner.
No, but like, yeah, he was pretty bipartisan with all of the people he was blackmailing for obvious reasons. No, but I think like the same with the video game thing. The problem is that I think, another criticism of Byung-Chul Han would be that I think he's taking this sort of achievement society a little bit too much on face value. And I mean, not really, because he does admit a lot of it's fake. But like you were saying with the example of the video game tier system, where if you're losing a number of rounds at a row because like your team is shit, that they're going to put you on a better team with Call of Duty or Halo or whatever, and that you're going to like give just enough, a little bit of the carrot to like get you interested again. That is in itself not really proper achievement as such. It's not like back in the day, I don't know, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, where it's like, I'm 5th prestige. And there was like a lot of shenanigans with boosting or whatever. But
sure,
you know, if you were doing it hardcore, then it's like, yeah, that's an achievement. I mean, it's probably a waste of time, but I prestiged maybe twice and I realized it was a waste of time. Even though I wasn't the greatest Call of Duty player, I wasn't. I was middling at best. But the point being is that like, that is not the sort of standards of what people have presented to us. And, you know, Byung-Chul Han's a very deep critic of neoliberalism, for example. It's not what's presented as pure competition within a market that has a very objective framework. That's literally just engineering for your attention by giving you fake achievement. It's like literal stats boosting to keep you hooked. That's like, at what point? I mean, I know this is a cliche point. This is like, who's that senator that hated video games?
It's a great question. I don't
remember. Jack Thompson.
Well, no, he wasn't a senator. He was just like an attorney.
Yeah, Jack Thompson. Yeah.
Although like, I think the most sympathetic year he ever had, I think, was like the late Senator Joe Lieberman.
Yeah, Lieberman.
I could be wrong. Don't crucify me, Chad. I don't remember this part of history very well.
Well, Tipper Gore censored music before that, so
that's also true.
No, but that's like a Jack Thompson point that it's essentially the same way a drug dealer will give you a free fix just to like keep you hooked. It's like, it was like that thing with, I believe it was CS:GO, and like they were getting like literal children to gamble with skins.
Well, yeah, the loot box system. And I mean, that wasn't just CS:GO. It was also virtually everybody and their mother. Like they got, I mean, Battlefront was criticized for this. I mean, there is still it's still fucking gambling in my book. Like it's War Thunder does this, every major game does this, but I mean also like on one hand I get it because it's quote unquote free to play, but like no, I the gambling is gambling. No, thank you.
Steve Austin, The Rock both did racist promos multiple times. Yeah, that's true.
And also true. Like wait a second,
Teddy DiBiase and Virgil. That was racist, you know. Like...
Well, also the freaking Iron Sheik and all that other jazz. It's just like this is deliberately.
All of it was racist.
All of it was like a stand-in for America's like geopolitical / racial foes.
Even Jim Cornette, when he left the WWE as a booker, he's like, "You want to do a woman having a miscarriage? Fuck no!" And they did that. They fucking did that with Kane and Lita. They fucking Lita had a miscarriage because of Kane. They did this. You know what they did? I mentioned this in my podcast. You know what Vince McMahon came up with? You ever heard of the Katie Vick storyline, Prude?
No.
It's where Katie Vick was the alleged girlfriend of Kane that he redacted by accident. And there was a segment, I shit you not, where he was in a feud with Triple H. Triple H went to a funeral home in a Kane mask and grabbed a mannequin of a woman and pretended it was Kane's girlfriend, Katie Vick. It was like, they fucking did that shit. What were they thinking in that writing room? What were they thinking? You know?
Sounds like Kino to me.
Jim Cornette had a funny line in a commentary once about a wrestler running faster than a man on a scooter in Africa with fried chicken strapped to it. I think Cornette apologized. To be fair, he did apologize for that line recently. I remember he apologized for that one. Yeah,
never
Dwayne Johnson.
Apologize.
yeah. The Rock had racist storylines.
The most ethnically ambiguous character of WWE wrestlers, racist storylines, perfect.
You know what was the best? When they tried to get this thing where The Rock was gonna run for president on the Democrat ticket, but then he started doing like mild anti-woke stuff where he's like, I think the woke has gone too far. Now they hate The Rock. They hate
what
The
a
Rock.
sensible centrist.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a sensible centrist.
Oh my god. Anyways, let's move on.
I
remember watching the Katie Vick thing live. I was like,
how long have we
I was
been
like
going?
12 years old. We're almost done.
Okay.
Here to talk about capitalism. So
we were here already. Where did we? There we go. Agamben contends that we are all hominis sacri virtually and potentially, and this is because we all stand under a sovereign injunction and are exposed to absolute expendability. However, this diagnosis contradicts all features that define contemporary society, which that is no longer a society of sovereignty. The injunction that makes us all hominis sacri is not a sovereign injunction, but the injunction to achieve. The achievement subject that considers itself free, fashions itself as homo liber, its own sovereign and self-made, stands under the injunction to achieve, thereby makes itself into homo sacer. The sovereign of achievement society is then the bearer human of his own self. Likewise, Ehrenberg's theory of depression overlooks the systemic violence inhabiting today's achievement society. For the most part, his analyses are psychological, not economic or political. Therefore, he does not observe the capitalistic relations of self-exploitation and the achievement subject's psychic maladies. According to Ehrenberg, the only imperative to belong to oneself entails depression. Depression is the pathological expression of the late modern man's failure to become himself. Ehrenberg equates this type with Nietzsche's sovereign man, but he fails to notice the identity between sovereign and homo sacer, master and slave, that actually holds. For Nietzsche, it is not sovereign man, but the last man who exploits himself as his own vassal. Counter to what Ehrenberg claims, Nietzsche advanced sovereign man in the name of cultural criticism as a countermodel to the exhausted achievement subject. That is why sovereign man is a man of leisure, a hyperactive person that would have disgusted Nietzsche. The strong soul keeps calm and moves slowly and has no aversion to what's too lively. Thus spoke Zarathustra declares, quote, all of you who are in love with hectic work and whatever is fast, new, and strange, you find it hard to bear yourselves. Your diligence is escape, and you will forget and the will to forget yourself. If you believed more in life, you would hurl yourself less into the moment. You do not have enough to content yourselves in waiting, not even for laziness.
Well, that's what Nietzsche said about the last man. They're always
so good.
They're always caught in some new bauble or new interest, or there's always like a fetishism of,
oh boy, big news.
Big news. Yeah, it's the same phenomenon.
To some extent, Twitter turns us all into the last man.
Yeah. He talks about this in Flies at the Marketplace as well, that they're willing to hear any like new and strange doctrine that could give them like just a momentary level of intrigue, but then that slowly fades into the next one. Also, like, Zarathustra talks about the capacity of forgetting as well. But it seems like, and again, this is like a point in Infocracy Byung-Chul Han brings up, that it's like modern informational man is like incapable of forgetting because information is always at our fingertips. Whereas to overcome oneself in the Nietzschean sense in Zarathustra, the capacity for forgetting of slights, of petty intrigue, of nonsense is integral. And a man that cannot forget is a man that's trapped in his own hell. And so, but we can never forget anything. It's always there, So yeah.
carrying on here. Well, we'll have to wrap up soon because I got to go to work tomorrow.
Yeah.
The capitalist economy absolutizes survival. It is not concerned with the good life. It is sustained by the illusion that more capital produces more life, which means a greater capacity for living. The rigid, rigorous separation between life and death casts a spell of ghostly stiffness over life itself. Concern about living the good life yields to the hysteria of surviving. The reduction of life to biological vital processes makes life itself bare and strips it of all narrativity. Boy, does that not remind you of COVID. It takes livingness from life, which is much more complex than simple vitality and health. So true. There's the metaphysical aspect of life is taken away from itself. And I think that is what triggered what Tara Isabella Burton wrote in 2021 as weird Christianity. The mania for health emerges when life has become as flat as a coin and stripped of all narrative content, all value. Given the atomization of society and the erosion of the social, all that remains is the body of the ego, which is to be kept healthy at any cost. The loss of ideal value leaves, other than the exhibition of the value of the ego, only health value behind. The bare life makes all teleology vanish, every in order to that would give reason to remain healthy. Health becomes self-referential and voids itself into purposiveness without purpose.
That's funny how he's critiquing both like right-wing bodybuilders and Marxists at the same time. As like, this is like the best non-Marxist critique of capitalism ever, in my opinion. But yeah.
The life of the bare man in achievement society is holy and bare for another reason entirely. It is bare because stripped of all transcendental value. It is bare because stripped of all transcendental value. It has been reduced to the imminency of vital functions and capabilities, which are to be maximized by any and all means. The inner logic of the achievement society dictates its evolution into a doping society. Life reduced to a bare vital functioning is life to be kept healthy unconditionally. Health is the new goddess. That is why bare life is holy. The hominis sacri of the achievement society also differ from those of the society of sovereignty on another score. They cannot be killed at all. Their life equals all that of the undead. They are too alive to die and too dead to live.
Well, imagine that, a sovereign that doesn't redact you, but a sovereign that demands that you live in a zombified state forever. Although unless you're in Canada, by the way.
That's the NDSA, but yeah.
Yeah. No, but that's great. Like, I mean, that is... really, I think he's going to what Ernst Becker talked about as the denial of death. That's really the inspiration for this last passage. And how, like, late capital has, in a way, turned us against ourselves in that sense of, of course, he's not saying that any, like, alternative to that is somewhat better because these other regimes have a weird way of working in the politics of death or the necropolitical into everyday life. But the point being is that there is a sense in which, you're not healthy. You're kind of healthy because you're still living, or you're alive in the sort of biological sense, but there's no elan vital. There's no vital functioning. And so he's getting this sort of Ernst Becker sense of the denial of death, of that what happens in the absence of any grander metaphysical teleology. It's to stave off death as long as possible, and it's to deny its reality upon us. And in a time where death seemed like everyday life in the beginning of the 2020s, it still had a way of slipping away from us in terms of ignoring it or isolating ourselves or treating life as if it's sort of like a game of maximizing your ability to avoid this thing. And there were people that devoted their whole conscious attention to it. Yeah. And, I think that it's sort of like, I remember back in the day when I critiqued Molbug on his essay about COVID. And I said, well, the liberal project is still going to find a way, right? Globalization is still going to find a way. And they did. Because, like Agamben said at the time and like Byung-Chul Han said, it works on the individual level. So their solution wasn't to close global travel. It wasn't to isolate people into borders. It wasn't a sort of reawakening of the nation state the way that Curtis Yarvin predicted, but rather it's to work that social isolation. And what was the buzz term? I even forget. Like, I was so traumatized as a Leaf, I even forgot half the terms, the buzz terms. Social distancing. That it would work on an individual level rather than on a national level. and that sort of like post-national project can still be maintained in the age when maybe it was a good idea to close borders to certain nations like China, but we couldn't think of that. That the project must live on. And so I think a lot of people, like, a fair criticism of people like Curtis Yarvin at the time was there's sort of, and a lot of people on the political right, unfortunately, the beginning of it was their hopefulness of it, that it would upend the project of post-Cold War, end of history global liberalism. It's like, no, it actually strengthened it in a lot of ways. But, yeah.
That was how, I mean, COVID aside, I mean, a lot of this essay from these last several pages that we read just hits COVID right on the head. But even outside of COVID, even now, like the amount of existence that has been reduced to like, well, isn't life just fine because I can DoorDash and do what I want just to live for existence's sake? Or the more popular one that I see is that I live despite others. Like survival has been
That's the Will
reduced.
Stansel plan, right?
Well,
there.
sure, but I mean, like survival has been reduced to the tantamount that like my only telos in life is to exist as a middle finger to my enemies. Which, okay,
Right.
fine, right? Like that's been around for forever, but there's no greater meaning. Like, I really do think, regardless of one's religious affiliation, I think that even our non-Christian friends do the same. Is that what are we looking for? Is to recover a telos, a recovery of something that has been lost in this sterile age. The present age is engaged in what Kierkegaard would call the leveling. And I've written about this. You can look it up. It's called Kierkegaard and the Gay Paperclip on Substack. But also that fundamentally now to live is merely to exist. And there is no greater value than existing. To a point now where like there is a hagiography of just like the good life and what was the good life, and leftists will be like, oh, it'll just be a picture of big tits and them saying like, this is what they took from you. And it's like, well, yeah, sure. Like bring back the tits. That's always a good thing. Bring back the heterosexuality. But also it's not just that. It's the fact that life fundamentally had meaning, that life fundamentally had something more to do than just getting by or surviving. At one point in time, the idea of just getting by and surviving was lampooned almost to the point where like we made slice of life dramas about all the same bullshit we all tried to achieve, whether you were a young urban professional or just someone trying to make their life look a little something more like 30 something in the 1980s, or
Office
even today.
Spaces, yeah, that movie.
Yeah, or even today, where now we get lost in the sterile liminal spaces of the things we see on the internet, not realizing that the things that have been taken from you, either from COVID or from immigration, means that you have now effectively, not only are you bowling alone, but you're bowling alone online alone. And that's even worse. And so I guess for me, it's really strange because most of my life is not on the internet. And so I live in this really strange world where I still look at the online world as a kind of like semi-private entity outside of my own life, despite the fact that a majority of the people I interact with IRL nowadays know who I am. But I mean, like this morning, I had coffee with friends before going to work. I mean, I woke up super early in the morning to do this, and it was totally worth it. Like literally, I went to work with a giant shit-eating grin on my face saying, today could be a shitty day at this new job, and I don't care because they can't take this morning from me. I mean, today was great anyways. But even then, like, we've become the self-achieving man that like Byung-Chul Han writes about here. Yeah, it is Nietzsche's last man. Like, look at me. I'm chasing trends. I'm chasing discourse. I'm doing the same meme that everyone else is because I want to be seen cool and whatnot. And even as Nadi is writing in her book about anti-memetics, the most powerful thing that we have nowadays is that conformism, or the violence, as Byung-Chul Han writes about it, as inclusion. And so now, all of a sudden, there is no life. There is no vitality. There is no nothing that leads to greater end. Like you can say whatever you will about Bap, but I still really like that quote where he's like, I am roused by a great slumber to save my frog friends from a great ugliness. That still sounds cringe to some people, but I think that goes pretty fucking hard. Like, I am here to do something, to rouse you from the sleep of sterility and to do something about it. I am here to remind you that the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Please repent. I am here to remind you to embrace that barbarian spirit and to conquer the devil inside you. All of that's out there. And it's willingness to achieve it or to hunt after it. And for us, I think that means to avoid the sickness unto death, which is despair. And that despair comes from sterility and self-exploitation. because you are being told by everyone and your mother in the boardroom, in life, and online to debase yourself for someone else's entertainment. Tell that guy to go fuck himself. You're more than that.
Well, I think a critique that someone on the political left would say is, well, you guys are ignoring capitalism. I don't ignore it. I think that, obviously,
I think most people don't ignore it, period. I think that
yeah.
the knee-jerk reaction of calling someone a communist or a Marxoid has kind of disappeared on a lot of places of the political right, because everyone knows that the system's rigged against them.
Yeah. No, but that's what I was going to say. I think that, yes, I mean, obviously, late capital is really a huge driving force of all the things that we're talking about here. I wouldn't say that. Of course, like, I disagree with the Marxist sort of dialectic of history. I think it's more complicated, and I think, like, I mean, some of this. I mean, I think abolishing capital is sort of an impossibility. Obviously, I mean, they would say that. Well, of course you believe that. I mean, what did Zizek say, that people can imagine the sun exploding before the end of capitalism? I mean, Mark Fisher even said that, there's obviously something to capitalist realism, but I mean, I think I wouldn't want to be ignorant of the effects that capitalism, or late capital, whatever you want to call it, has on our daily life. I think that in some ways, a lot of these political categories, be it Marxism or other ideologies, unfortunately suffer from being actualized in the 20th century in conditions that are more complicated. Conditions that we face are a bit more complicated, not really more complicated, but rather not more complicated, but different than what Western societies faced. I mean, really the whole world, not just in the West.
Sure, yeah.
Faced in the 20th century. And I think that a lot of the sort of haggling over ideologies of the 20th century, the 19th and 20th century, the sort of 19th, 20th century millenarianism, is a large part as to why we can never sort of get past them and get past the debates over it. You can acknowledge that capital is obviously a thing. It is a huge thing. But I mean, yeah, there's always a point of contention or debate there. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm obviously open to more anti-capitalist critiques of things. I wouldn't want to be, a stereotype of a conservative or whatever. But like what you were saying, like, I mean, at the end of the day, it goes back to this sort of great loss of any form of teleology. Even the things that we do to, like, employment, health, interests, hobbies. I mean, most people's hobbies comes down to consuming things, obviously.
Yeah, they really do.
But they lose meaning after a while. I mean, even wrestling lost meaning, like everything. And so, you know what the perfect metaphor for this day and age is?
What's that?
The Simpsons. Just something that goes on forever, that hums in the background, and it's like decrepit, sclerotic form.
And it does not die.
It does not die, but even though it's long since lost its spirit or meaning or cultural transgression, South Park's like that. Like,
yeah, but they took that grift money and fucking ran.
Yeah, that old.
And I can't even blame them.
Yeah, the Trump, like, he got Colbert canceled, even though they were losing millions on keeping Colbert in the air.
$40 million a year.
Yeah. That South Park took a real gamble by insulting Trump, even though
they took a real gamble by basically redoing the movie from like 25 plus years ago.
You know what the sad part is about, and this here, okay, I'll tell you, I'll give a good piece of advice to any like conservative culture warrior take seller out there. Never fall into the sloppulous trap of this thing used to be good, but now it's not. Because the leftists can
don't be nostalgic.
Don't be nostalgic, because the leftoid can always point to you being inconsistent in your nostalgia. What people said, there's a lot of commentators that were like, I wish South Park was still really edgy. You know what they could do? They could easily do two things, because you're operating on the wavelength of the mainstream culture anyways. So the assumptions that mainstream culture has can easily work against you. Number one, they could just say that, well, Donald Trump's in power, and so you have to critique him. And number two, when you say, I wish South Park was just as edgy as before, they could always say, well, here's a counterexample of them making fun of Christians or making fun of whoever, right? They had that abortion episode. You know what the real truth of it? You know what would be a proper response by the conservative, nostalgic take seller, cultural warrior would be to be like, you know what? South Park was always safe edgy. South Park was never that really transgressive in the grand scheme of things. Because Trey Parker and Matt Stone, they were like, you know, new atheist, libertarian types that didn't really believe in anything. They like took this like irony poisoning Gen X attitude to heart. And so in the end of the day, they criticize Trump. Who cares? It's
Maybe
just one among many.
Dirtbag leftists.
But see, just like their soy jack, Funko Pop collecting leftist equivalent, the conservative take seller culture warrior is just the same fucking soy face over pop culture. Just that you want your slop to be based. And so instead the proper response being, you know what, is Trey Parker and Matt Stone a bunch of hypocrites? Is the guys that made Rick and Morty a bunch of hypocrites? Is fucking Tim Heidecker a hypocrite? Yes. Who cares? Just one among many, right? No one remembers that abortion episode that they did where fucking Cartman has the Taco Bell restaurant or whatever it was built off of harvested fetuses. It's like, it's crazy stuff, right? But it's like, who cares? Did I used to watch South Park? Yeah, of course. I like South Park, you know, back in the day. I mean, I haven't watched it in like almost, I don't know, 5-10 years. But it's like, you're playing into that game.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing with the fucking Sydney. I'm sorry I'm swearing too much. It's 3 hours.
No.
It's the same thing with Sydney Sweeney.
Let's go ahead.
It's the same thing with criticizing Zendaya. It's the same thing with criticizing, I don't know, like, it's like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
You know, Neil Young is a totally deranged boomer liberal, right?
Yeah.
But he's got some good jams. And you know what one song that I like in particular is that one, Castles Burning. He's like, it's only castles burning, but you'll find someone turning around. Mm-hmm. It's like, you know what? All that stuff out there, all that stuff that you see in mainstream pop culture, it's only castles burning. And yeah, I know the argument of not ceding ground to your political enemies, but in the absence of it, I mean, when it comes to academia, when it comes to real culture, when it comes to things that do matter, then yes, I agree with that critique. That it's stupid to be like, you know what, just become a plumber. Don't do anything. Don't go to university. Don't try to be an artist. I agree, that's stupid. But when you're arguing over something like South Park and Sydney Sweeney's ass and jeans, or how ugly Zendaya is, it's like, what, you're going to save institution like, I mean, Hollywood's still capable of producing Kino, obviously, you know, in spite of itself even. But what are you going to do? You're going to be like, I'm going to take the culture industry and I'm going to make slop that's based. I'm going to make brain rot that's based. I mean, do they have based brain rot? Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. Like, do they got, is Kai Cenat based or whatever? Who knows? Who cares? Right? It's like, but that's the condition you find yourself in. It's castles burning. And to be like, well, I like South Park back when they were, you know, mildly making fun of like, you know, I don't know, like Obama. It's like, well, yeah, but you're kind of ignoring everything else, right? What did you wanted them to be more consistent? Like, come on, man, come on. Like, I just want, like, listen, I want online take sellers to be a bit better about this stuff. Because you're not going to expect consistency from these people. You're not going to expect consistency from Hollywood. You're not going to expect consistency from video game companies. Mm-hmm. You know, when was the last time you had a based video game? You can read a based message in them, but what are you going to do? You're going to have like, you know, some deranged, like, Fed posty online right-wing video game. I know Sam Hyde and the boys are making a video game, but it's like, what, you're going to have a AAA studio where you're like, I don't know, a video game where you're an ICE agent detaining illegals? Like, no, it's never going to happen. Come on.
I don't think there's anything that's like, I don't think there's an explicitly right-wing video game, but there are certainly video games that I think are more, I guess, like coded in a reactionary, or they have certain themes that are willingly, at least anti-progressive.
Can you imagine an ICE video game?
I'm sure there's mods for Ready or Not that would let you be an ICE agent. But Gio, it's been 3 hours. Let's go to the super chat, shall we?
Super chat.
All right, so entropy right now for me is busted. However, if you go to the link that is in the description, I'll put it in chat again. You can still send a tip or send a super chat that way. It just says I'm not live. I am. I can check the revenue. I will read your chats right now as you do so. So I'm going to start with the YouTube ones, and if anyone sends one via entropy, totally understand, would appreciate it. And then we will just we'll carry on from here, and we'll just go on our merry way. So we'll start off with the YouTube ones. Gio, you said you had a lovely little video out on wrestling and on Hulk Hogan.
Yes. Emergency Hulk Hogan wrestling episode where I read the Chris Hedges essay on professional wrestling. I read the famous Paul Cantor essay on postmodernism and professional wrestling, and I break down a lot of analysis about really it's not just about the Hulkster, it's really more about where professional wrestling can go in the future in whatever you want to call it, hypermodernity or whatever. So yeah.
All right, well let's go to the super chats then here. So let's see here. Senna Haster just sends $5 and he gives a little salute. Thank you, Senna Haster.
Thank you.
Lugabrius says for Canadian $10, he says, do you think that Canada lacks an organic nationality created primarily as an administrative entity by the BNA Act in 1867 for debt consolidation and imperial control rather than as a real society?
There's certainly that theory, yes. But I think that Canada created a unique nation in spite of all of that. And just purely responding to the conditions of forming the nation of Canada at the time. But it was, I mean, you know, a British-controlled agrarian society, at least in the, you know, Anglophone parts of Canada. But, you know, there's other people that talk exclusively about these things, such as Fortis Sax, Black Horse, Endeavor, and so on and so forth. I haven't read enough primary text to really give you a satisfying answer, but those people certainly have. There's other ones as well. I think Argent has a few videos on this as well. So, yeah, but thank you for the super chat. $10. So, yeah.
Machiavelli sucks. Oh, he's changed his name to Being White is Great. Well, I really can't complain. I like being white. He says inclusion equals stealing from the white man.
Oh my god.
That's one way to look at it. That's for damn sure. Let me go check entropy real quick. If not, of course, YouTube super chats are fine as well for this evening. But no, I think we're okay. What do I have got going on? I am aiming to have part 1 of a series of essays I'm going to call in sort of a homage to David McGowan, called Program to Post. I'm going to have the introduction and sort of the goal of my essays pointed out, and by hopefully, Lord willing, by Friday. I don't have anything planned for the rest of this week in terms of content. I'll probably put out that pedagogy video or as a video essay probably as well. And then I've got a few more things lined up later on.
That's a great title, Program to Post.
I'm very proud of it. So I think it's going to be a good time to say the least. So we'll go from there. But I mean, I've got a lot of stuff in the works for writing, and I'm going to make sure that it happens. So okay, Oswald Art, he had sent a super chat real quick. Yeah. Also, I have to give a lovely shout out to our friend Owen Zaleski, because he made this the last time we were on the air, where I was talking about streaming in like 100-degree weather, and I was definitely sweaty last time. And also, in true frog fashion, I am wearing one of those cotton t-shirts that you can get from like Target that has frog and toad on them. My fiance got this for me as a gift. It's one of my favorite, most comfortable t-shirts. I am a big fan. Would recommend. It is a good time to be a frog friend. And you can be a frog friend of the show at subscribestar.com/theprudentialist. You guys paid my rent this month, so thank you very much. I greatly appreciate that. Yeah. Oswald Art says, hello, gents. I'm happy to hear that you are well. I have a job interview tomorrow, so prayers would be appreciated. My sister just had her first child last week. Well, congratulations on being an uncle, Mr. Owen. So I pray that your sister and her child are healthy and well. Congratulations on your engagement, Prude. God bless. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And also, if I could extend a prayer request to all of those that are listening or are the praying type, My friend T.R. Hudson and his lovely wife just had their first child the other week.
Oh, wow.
And actually, I think it's just less than a week ago now that their child has been born. She is doing well. They're a little concerned about a heart condition. So if you could pray, for their daughter, I'd greatly appreciate it. He is a very good friend of mine, both IRL and online, and well deserving of it. So but thank you, Owen. I greatly appreciate that. It's very kind of you. And yeah, I think that'll be it for the evening. So I think it's
Patreon.com/Gio's Content Corner. Oh, sorry, no, I'm getting that confused. Patreon.com/Giant Productions. Substack.com/Gio's Content Corner. The whole podcast was 4 hours, by the way, on nothing but professional wrestling. And hopefully this week I wanted to get out the Zach Brown interview, but that's going to take a lot of editing because Zach Brown was kind of flying high on some drinks and God, it's gonna be like
a good time.
Someone compared some of my interviews that I censor for YouTube to watching the Sopranos reruns on CBS with the with the bad words edited out.
Or 80 yard. Yeah.
Yeah, or 80 yard. Yeah. Anyways, hopefully I'll get the Zach Brown interview out this week. So I've been watching a lot of found footage horror films. I might want to do a podcast on them. So and I have also recorded the Warhammer 40K Hell's Reach episode. If Scribe is listening to this. No, Zach Brown, the artist, not the band. My good friend Zach Brown.
So probably the next time. So probably the 12th. We'll see actually, because my fiance flies in that week to move here. So we'll see how the second week of August goes. If all goes well,
I may be doing something around this first week as well. So,
yeah. We're gonna be doing the Steins Gate stuff soon. Yeah. So we're gonna follow through on a paid 2-parter because there are 2 seasons to cover. So we will be busy for sure. But don't you worry, there's plenty of content from both of us that is coming out very soon. So with that, I think it's time to call it a night.
All right. God bless. Goodbye. And for the Hulkster, too sweet.
See you, gents.